I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. Christmas dinner 2024. Turkey on the table, carols playing softly, my parents smiling at me like I mattered. But when I walked into the kitchen for more pie, I heard them in the living room plotting, not whispering, planning, calculating. Once they're in the condo for a few months, she won't have the heart to kick them out. My mother's voice, talking about my home, the $300,000 condo I bought with 8 years of blood sweat and 2 jobs. The only thing I'd ever accomplished without them. Then we work on the paperwork, transfer it to her sister. She'll understand, family helps family. I stood frozen pie server in my trembling hand. 30 years of being the responsible one, the strong one, the one who didn't need anything. And this was my reward. They were going to steal my home and give it to my golden child sister like it was theirs to give. But here's what they didn't know. Quiet doesn't mean weak. I smiled, walked back in, served them pie, and I agreed to everything. I let my sister pack boxes, let her brag on Facebook about her gorgeous new downtown home, let my parents think they'd won. While they celebrated their scheme, I made a call that would change everything. 10 days later, moving day arrived. My sister showed up with a U-Haul, my parents, her kids, and a key that no longer worked. When the door opened, the woman standing there wasn't me. It was my brother-in-law's ex-wife, the one my sister destroyed 5 years ago. And she'd just bought my condo. Cash. What happened next? Stay with me. Because this story has twists you won't see coming and an ending that proves karma doesn't forget. It just waits for the perfect moment to strike. My name is Emma Carter. I'm 35 years old, an office manager at a small tech company downtown. And I've spent the last 8 years of my life doing something I never thought possible, building a life that was entirely mine. No help, no handouts, just me, 2 jobs, and a dream of owning something that nobody could take away. That $300,000 condo represented every sacrifice, every skipped vacation, every night I chose overtime over going out with friends. It was my sanctuary, my proof that I mattered. I should have known they'd find a way to take it. The dining room looked like something out of a holiday magazine. Mom had outdone herself this year. The table practically groaned under the weight of the turkey, golden and glistening, surrounded by all the traditional fixings. Stuffing spilling out of a ceramic bowl, cranberry sauce catching the candlelight, 3 different pies cooling on the sideboard. Bing Crosby crooned softly from the speaker in the corner, and the Christmas tree in the living room twinkled with lights that had been in our family for decades. On the surface, it was perfect. The kind of Christmas you see in movies where everyone's smiling and grateful and full of love. But I'd learned a long time ago to look beneath the surface. I sat at my usual spot, the one closest to the kitchen, convenient for refilling drinks or grabbing forgotten serving spoons, and watched the familiar dynamic play out. Mom served my sister Jenna first, of course placing the best slice of turkey on her plate with a warm smile. Dad asked David, my brother-in-law, about his promotion at the bank, leaning forward with genuine interest. Jenna's dress got complimented 3 times before the blessing was even said. Their kids, 5-year-old Mason and 7-year-old Lily, were adorable and well-behaved, drawing praise from their grandparents every 5 minutes. I smiled and nodded and made appropriate comments. I'd perfected this role over 30 years. The responsible one, the independent one, the one who didn't need attention, because I was so capable of taking care of myself. The one who didn't matter quite as much. Dinner passed in a blur of small talk and laughter that never quite reached my chest. I noticed the little things the way I always did. How Dad asked Jenna if she needed help paying for Mason's soccer camp, but never asked me about my life. How Mom jumped up to get Jenna more wine before her glass was even empty, but I'd refilled my own water 3 times. How when I mentioned my recent promotion at work, the conversation lasted exactly 30 seconds before pivoting back to Lily's school play. I told myself it didn't hurt anymore. I'd gotten used to it. After dinner, Mom shooed everyone away from the table. "You all relax. Emma and I will handle dessert." It was tradition, the two of us in the kitchen while everyone else settled in the living room. Usually Mom would chat with me during cleanup, and I'd pretend those 15 minutes of attention filled the gap left by an entire childhood of being second best. Tonight, though, Mom seemed distracted. "Honey, can you grab the pie server from the drawer? I'll get the plates." I moved toward the kitchen, grateful for something to do with my hands. The pie server was in the far drawer, and I had to dig past the old serving spoons and random utensils we never used. That's when I heard it. Voices from the living room, low and conspiratorial. I should have announced myself, should have walked right in, but something in the tone made me freeze. "We need to get them into that condo soon." Mom's voice quieter than at dinner, but still clear. "It's the perfect solution." My hand stilled on the drawer handle. Once they're settled in for a few months, she won't have the heart to kick them out. That was Dad using his planning voice, the one he used when working through logistics. "Then we can work on the paperwork. The condo is worth $300,000. It's too much for just her anyway." Mom again, and I could picture her shaking her head as if my owning my own home was somehow excessive. Family should share. The pie server clattered in my shaking hand. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. They were talking about my condo, my home, the one I'd bought with my own money, my own sweat, my own sacrifice. Then I heard Jenna's voice, and my blood turned to ice. "Are you sure she'll agree?" She knew. My sister knew about this plan, whatever it was. They were all in on it. "She always does." Mom's voice held such certainty, such casual dismissal. "She's the responsible one." I stood behind that kitchen doorway pie server in my trembling hand and felt something inside me crack open. Not break, crack. Like a fault line that had been building pressure for 3 decades, waiting for this exact moment to split wide. They were going to take my home, the one thing I'd built without them, and they'd already decided I'd let them. I took 3 deep breaths, smoothed my face into neutrality, picked up the pie server and walked back into the dining room like I'd heard nothing. "Anyone want more pie?" My voice came out steady, cheerful even. Mom and Dad exchanged a quick glance. Had I been gone long enough to hear? But I was already cutting into the pumpkin pie, my smile easy and familiar. Jenna's eyes met mine for a split second, and I saw something flicker there. Nervousness. Guilt, maybe. Good. Let her be nervous. "Sure, honey," Dad said, and just like that, the moment passed. I served them each a slice. Mom's with extra whipped cream, just how she liked it. Dad's with a clean cut, no crumbs. Jenna's generous because she was always given more. And with every slice, with every smile, I made a decision. They thought I was clueless. Thought I was the same pushover who'd spent 30 years accommodating, understanding, sacrificing. Thought I'd hand over my home, my sanctuary, my proof of worth, just because they decided I should. They thought I was powerless. But they had no idea what I was about to do. I drove home that night with my knuckles white on the steering wheel, their voices playing on repeat in my head. But it wasn't just tonight's conversation that haunted me. It was every conversation, every moment, every choice that had led to this point over the past 3 decades. Jenna is 3 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, the world rearranged itself around her. I was 5 when she came home from the hospital, old enough to remember the shift. Suddenly, I was the big sister, the responsible one, the one who had to understand that babies need more attention. I learned early that my needs came second, and I told myself it was temporary. That once Jenna got older, things would even out. They never did. By the time Jenna turned 16, the pattern was set in stone. I remember her sweet 16 like it was yesterday, not because I was part of it, but because of what I wasn't part of. Mom and Dad presented her with a brand new Honda Civic in the driveway, painted custom teal because that was her favorite color that month. $25,000 just like that. Jenna screamed and cried and hugged them while I stood on the porch, genuinely happy for her because I didn't know any better yet. When I turned 16, Dad tossed me the keys to his 12-year-old Buick. "You can borrow it when I don't need it," he said. The check engine light was permanently on. I had to add oil every other week, but I smiled and said thank you because that's what good daughters did. The wedding was worse. Jenna married David when she was 24 and my parents spared no expense. $40,000 for a ceremony that looked like something out of a bridal magazine. Ice sculptures, a live band, 200 guests, an open bar. Jenna floated down the aisle in a dress that cost more than my first car, and I stood next to her as maid of honor, genuinely believing this was normal, that this was what parents did when they loved their children. 2 years later, when I got engaged to Michael, I was so excited to start planning. I'd been saving money, but I thought maybe, just maybe, my parents would want to contribute something. When I brought it up at Sunday dinner, Dad looked uncomfortable, and Mom patted my hand like I was a child, asking for something unreasonable. "Honey, weddings are so expensive and so stressful," Mom said. "Why don't you and Michael just go to the courthouse? It's just as meaningful, and you can use the money for practical things." "You've always been so sensible about these things." I went to the courthouse. Michael and I stood in front of a judge with 2 random witnesses pulled from the hallway. I wore a dress I already owned. We went to Olive Garden afterward. When I look at my wedding photos, there are exactly 4 of them, all taken on Michael's phone. When I look at Jenna's wedding album, leather-bound and professionally printed, I count 347 photos of the happiest day of her life. The marriage lasted 18 months. Turns out Michael was sleeping with his co-worker. I filed for divorce at 27, and when I called Mom crying, she said, "Well, honey, at least you didn't spend a fortune on the wedding." College was its own special nightmare. Jenna failed her entire freshman year at State. Just stopped going to classes, spent her time partying, came home with a 0.7 GPA. I thought surely there would be consequences, that this would be the moment my parents stopped enabling her. Instead, Dad wrote a check for $15,000 so she could retake her classes at community college. "She's still finding herself," he explained to me when I asked why they were rewarding her failure. "Education is important. She'll figure it out." She never did figure it out. Jenna dropped out after 1 semester at community college and started working retail. But that $15,000 investment in her education apparently used up the family college fund, because 8 months later, when I asked if they could loan me $5,000 for my first apartment deposit, Dad's answer was immediate and firm. "You need to stand on your own feet, Emma. That's how you build character." I worked 2 jobs for 8 more months, saving every penny, living in a house with 3 roommates in a neighborhood where I heard gunshots twice. My laptop got stolen from that house. When I mentioned it at dinner, Jenna said, "Oh, you can borrow mine." 3 weeks later, she spilled an entire glass of wine on it. The keyboard shorted out. It was ruined. "Accidents happen," Mom said with a shrug when I brought it up. I'm sure she didn't mean to. "She's younger. She needs guidance. She's still learning. She's going through a hard time. She's always been more sensitive." I heard every variation of every excuse. And somewhere along the way, I stopped asking for things. I worked 2 jobs through college, paid my own tuition, graduated with honors that my parents forgot to attend because Jenna had a work conflict that same day and needed them to babysit. I told myself I was building character, building independence, building a life I could be proud of. Really, I was just learning to expect nothing. Even now, at 35, the pattern continues, like a script nobody bothered to rewrite. Jenna and David live in a 3-bedroom rental apartment that's 1,400 square feet. It's nice. It's bigger than a lot of places. But Jenna complains constantly about feeling cramped, about not having a yard, about her kids sharing a bedroom. Last month, Mom and Dad bought them a new washer and dryer set because theirs broke. $1,200 paid in cash, delivered and installed. I bought my condo 3 years ago. 1,200 square feet of downtown perfection that I saved for 8 years to afford. 1 bedroom, 1.5 baths, a balcony with a view of the city skyline. It's perfect for me. When I told my parents I'd closed on it, they said, "We're so proud of you, honey, but you don't need our help anyway. You've always been so independent." They visited once, stayed for 20 minutes, said it was lovely. They're at Jenna's house every week, babysitting, helping with repairs, bringing groceries. They deserve better, Mom said last month when Jenna complained about her apartment again. A growing family needs space. My condo sits empty most evenings, just me and the silence, and I'd convinced myself I'd made peace with it. I had my own space, my own life, my own accomplishments that I'd earned without them. I'd turned being overlooked into independence, neglect into strength. But sitting in my car in my own driveway that Christmas night, their voices still echoing in my ears, I finally saw it clearly. I wasn't independent by choice. I was independent by necessity. And they hadn't been building my character all these years. They'd been teaching me that I didn't matter. For 30 years, I was the afterthought, the one who didn't need love because I didn't demand it. And now they wanted to take the very roof over my head, the one thing I'd built without them. I sat in my car, staring at the building in front of me, the one with my condo on the 4th floor, and let myself remember what it took to get here. 8 years. That's how long I worked for this place. 8 years of saying no to almost everything that makes life enjoyable while everyone around me said yes. I was 24 when I started saving seriously. Fresh out of a failed marriage, working as an office manager during the week and picking up whatever weekend gigs I could find. Catering events where I served champagne to people celebrating milestones I couldn't afford. Pet sitting for families, jetting off to places I'd only seen in magazines. Every dollar went into an account I named Freedom, because that's what it represented. Freedom from depending on anyone. Freedom from disappointment. My friends from college took trips to Cancun every spring. They backpacked through Europe, posting photos of the Eiffel Tower and the Colosseum. They called me boring when I said no for the 5th year in a row when I showed up to happy hour and ordered water when I suggested we hang out at someone's apartment instead of going to the new restaurant downtown. Some of them stopped calling eventually. I told myself it didn't matter because I had a plan, a goal that was bigger than weekend adventures. I cooked every single meal at home for 8 years. I learned to make my coffee instead of stopping at Starbucks. I wore the same winter coat for 6 seasons. When my coworkers went out for lunch, I ate the sandwich I'd packed that morning. When they planned weekend trips, I picked up extra catering shifts. Every tip, every bit of overtime, every birthday check from distant relatives went into that account. $60,000. That's what I needed for the down payment. It took me 8 years to save what my parents spent on Jenna's wedding in a single afternoon. 8 years of sacrifice to earn what they gave her for one day. I was 32 when I finally had enough. The realtor showed me 7 places before we walked into Unit 4B at 428 Market Street. The moment I stepped inside, I knew. Floor-to-ceiling windows that let in so much light, the whole space seemed to glow. A balcony overlooking the city skyline. Hardwood floors. A kitchen with granite countertops. 1 bedroom, 1.5 baths, 1,200 square feet of perfect. The day I got the keys, I sat in the empty living room and cried. Not sad tears. Relief. Joy. Disbelief. I held those keys in my hand and whispered to myself, "This is mine. Nobody gave it to me. I earned it." It was the first time in my life I'd accomplished something that was entirely, completely, undeniably mine. I called my parents from that empty living room sitting on the floor because I didn't have furniture yet, and told them I'd bought a condo. I was so excited I could barely get the words out. "That's nice, honey," Mom said. Then barely pausing, "Did we tell you about David's promotion at the bank? He's going to be a senior account manager." Even then, even in that moment, I was secondary. But I had my condo, and that was enough. I decorated it exactly the way I wanted. Minimalist because clutter made me anxious. Peaceful because I needed calm. Plants everywhere because taking care of something that grew and thrived made me feel capable. I hung travel postcards on one wall, places I still wanted to visit. Paris, Tokyo, Santorini. I put up motivational quotes I'd chosen myself, words that spoke to the person I was becoming. What I didn't hang was family photos. That was intentional. This space was mine, separate from the dynamics that had shaped my entire life. Here I wasn't the responsible one, or the independent one, or the one who didn't need anything. I was just Emma, and that was enough. Every morning I woke up to sunlight streaming through those windows and looked at the life I'd built. The downtown location meant I could walk to work. The view reminded me I'd climbed high enough to see beyond the limitations I'd been born into. This wasn't just a home. It was proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I could create something beautiful without anyone's permission or help. I'd imagined hosting dinner parties once I got settled. I'd pictured my parents coming over regularly, Mom admiring my decorating choices, Dad impressed by the smart investment. I'd imagined Jenna bringing the kids to visit their aunt in her cool downtown place. Instead, they visited once, 20 minutes. "It's so far downtown," Mom said. "The parking is terrible." They never came back. But they went to Jenna's apartment every week, the one she complained about constantly, the one that was somehow never good enough despite being 1,400 square feet. Now sitting in my car after that Christmas dinner, I understood what I'd been too naive to see before. The conversation I'd overheard wasn't about temporarily helping Jenna. Those weren't the words of parents asking for a favor. They were strategizing, planning. They'd use the oldest trick in their playbook, the one that had worked on me my entire life. Get Jenna and her family moved in, let a few months pass, then apply the pressure. The kids would be enrolled in downtown schools. Jenna would have made friends with the neighbors. They'd be settled, comfortable, established. And I'd be the villain if I asked them to leave. She won't have the heart to kick them out. That's what Dad had said, because they knew I was soft, knew I'd been trained my whole life to accommodate and understand and put everyone else first. They were counting on it. But this time they weren't asking me to share a toy or give up a bedroom or understand why someone else's needs mattered more. They were taking the one thing I'd built without them, the one accomplishment that proved I could stand on my own, and they were planning to redistribute it like I had no say in the matter. The irony was almost funny. My independence, the thing they'd forced me to develop by withholding support my entire life, had made me successful enough to have something worth taking. I'd been punished my whole life for not needing them, and now I was being punished for finally having something of my own. They weren't asking. They were taking. And suddenly, sitting in that car, I felt something I'd never felt before in my relationship with my family. Clarity. Cold, sharp, absolute clarity. This condo wasn't just a home. It was proof that I existed, that I mattered. And when they plotted to hand it to her like a consolation prize, I knew this wasn't about family. This was war. I didn't sleep for 3 days after Christmas. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying that conversation over and over until the words lost all meaning and became just sounds, just proof of betrayal. Then I'd get up, make coffee I didn't drink, and sit on my balcony watching the city wake up, while my mind traveled backward through 30 years of memories I'd carefully filed away under "it doesn't matter anymore." Except it did matter. It all mattered. I was 8 years old at Jenna's 5th birthday party. Mom and Dad rented a petting zoo. There were pony rides and a clown making balloon animals and a cake shaped like a castle with real sparklers. I remember standing at the edge of the yard watching Jenna ride that pony in circles, her delighted squeals piercing the air while neighborhood kids lined up for their turn. My birthday that same year was homemade cake and pizza from Domino's. 6 kids from my class. We played in the backyard. When I asked Mom why Jenna got ponies, and I didn't, she said, "You're older, honey. You understand that not every birthday has to be a big production." I was 12 when Jenna got braces. $6,000 for 2 years of orthodontic work because her teeth were slightly crooked. My front teeth overlapped in a way that made me self-conscious every time I smiled. I asked once if I could get braces too. "You don't smile much anyway," Dad said, not even looking up from his newspaper. "Besides, Jenna's teeth are worse. You can hardly notice yours." I noticed. I noticed every single day. I learned to smile with my mouth closed. High school graduation. I'd worked so hard, graduated with honors, earned a small scholarship to state college. The ceremony was on a Saturday morning in May. I scanned the crowd during the processional looking for my parents in the sea of faces. They weren't there. I walked across that stage, accepted my diploma, smiled for a photo with the principal, and felt a hole open up in my chest that I couldn't explain to anyone. I found out later, months later, during a casual conversation that they'd taken Jenna shopping that day. She was starting college in the fall and needed bedding decorations for her dorm room, all the essentials. It was the only day that worked with our schedule, Mom explained when I finally worked up the courage to ask. You understand, it was just a high school graduation. You'll have another one when you finish college. I did finish college. They made it to that graduation. They sat through the ceremony and took me to dinner afterward at Applebee's. Jenna couldn't make it. She had plans with friends. Nobody suggested rescheduling. Every time I needed something, the answer was the same. You're strong. You'll figure it out. As if strength was something I'd chosen rather than something I'd developed, because asking for help meant being reminded that other people's needs would always matter more than mine. Every time Jenna needed something, it was family helps family. As if she was family and I was just someone who happened to share their last name. The double standard accumulated over 30 years like compound interest, growing larger and more painful with each passing year until the weight of it was almost too much to carry. And now, sitting in my condo at 3 a.m, I did the math. The actual, literal math. $25,000 for Jenna's car, $40,000 for her wedding, $15,000 for college tuition she wasted, $1,200 for the washer and dryer last month, countless smaller amounts for bills, groceries, babysitting gifts. I estimated conservatively and came up with over $100,000 they'd given her throughout her life. What had they given me? Nothing. Zero. Less than zero, actually, because I'd asked to borrow $5,000 once and been told I needed to stand on my own feet. And now they wanted my condo. My $300,000 condo that I'd bought with money I earned in a city where they'd never lent me a dime. They wanted to redistribute it like I was a resource to be allocated like my success was somehow unfair because I'd achieved it without their help. Your sister has kids. She needs more space. That's what they'd say when they finally asked, as if having children entitled Jenna to my property. As if my years of sacrifice meant nothing compared to her decision to have a family. The twisted logic was almost impressive. I'd worked hard and succeeded, which meant I had a privilege that needed to be shared. The more capable I became, the more they felt entitled to take. I realized something sitting there in the dark. They weren't trying to help Jenna. They were punishing me for not needing them, for being strong enough to build something on my own, for succeeding without their support. My independence was a threat to their narrative, the one where Jenna was the one who needed love, and I was the one who was fine without it. The anger that had been building since Christmas crystallized into something colder, something sharper. I knew what they expected from me. They expected an emotional outburst they could dismiss as overreacting. They expected tears and accusations they could turn around and use as proof that I was unstable, unreasonable, selfish. They'd been managing me with the same tactics my entire life, and it had always worked because I'd always believed they had my best interests at heart. But they'd made a miscalculation this time. They'd gone after the one thing that mattered, the one achievement that proved I existed, and in doing so, they'd finally pushed me past the point of trying to earn their love. I pulled out my laptop and started taking notes. If they wanted to play manipulation games, I would play better. If they could scheme in secret, so could I. They'd taught me to be quiet, to swallow my anger, to always put family first. They'd spent 30 years training me to be invisible, compliant, understanding. But they'd forgotten something crucial. Quiet doesn't mean weak. Silence doesn't mean agreement. And being underestimated is the greatest advantage in any fight. I spent the next 2 days planning. Not frantically, not emotionally, but with the same careful calculation they'd used on me. They wanted my condo, fine. I'd let them think they were going to get it. I'd smile and nod and play the role of the dutiful daughter one last time. I'd let them believe they'd won. And then at the exact right moment, I would pull the rug out from under them so hard they'd never see solid ground again. They'd taught me to be quiet, to swallow my anger, to always put family first. But they forgot quiet doesn't mean weak. I would let them think they'd won right until the moment I pulled the rug out from under them. Mom's call came 3 days after Christmas, right on schedule. "Emma, honey, we need to talk about your sister's situation." Her voice had that careful tone she used when she wanted something, the one that pretended we were equals having a reasonable discussion. I agreed to come over that afternoon. I took my time getting ready, practicing expressions in the mirror. Hesitant but willing. Concerned but ultimately persuadable. I'd spent 30 years reading their cues, learning to give them what they wanted. Now I'd use that training against them. When I arrived, they were waiting in the living room like it was a board meeting. Dad sat in his recliner, Mom on the couch. Jenna perched on the edge of the ottoman, wringing her hands. They'd staged it carefully. I was directed to the chair opposite all of them, the one that felt like being called to the principal's office. "Your sister's lease is ending in February." Mom began jumping straight to the pitch. "And with the rent increases in this market, they're really struggling. You have that extra bedroom in your condo, and we thought it would be perfect." Jenna interrupted, her eyes already red like she'd been crying on cue. "Just temporarily, just until we get back on our feet." I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm. "I don't know. I like my space. I'm used to living alone." "It's only 6 months," Dad said, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "They'll save money, find something better. You'd be helping family Emma. That's what we do." The irony of those words coming from him was almost too much. "After everything we've done for you," as if they'd done anything for me besides teach me that I was always going to be second choice. "I like my privacy," I said, infusing my voice with just enough uncertainty to make them think they were winning. Jenna's tears started flowing for real now. "We have nowhere else to go. The kids are in school. David's commute is already so long. Please, Emma, you're my only sister." I did the math in my head. If I said no now, outright, they'd know something was wrong. They'd know I'd overheard them at Christmas. They might change their strategy, become more cautious, harder to outmaneuver. But if I agreed reluctantly after the exact amount of pressure I'd always given into before they'd relax, they'd think they'd won. They'd stop being careful. I let 20 minutes pass. I raised objections about utilities, about privacy, about having strangers in my space. They countered every concern with promises they had no intention of keeping. Finally, I sighed, a sound of defeat I'd perfected over decades. "Okay, but only 6 months. And we need clear rules about everything." The relief on their faces was instantaneous. Of course," Mom said quickly before I could reconsider. "We'll figure out all the details." "Thank you, honey. You're doing such a good thing." Jenna called me that evening, her voice bright with excitement. "Thank you so much. You're literally saving us. I'm going to start packing this weekend." She didn't ask when they could move in, didn't ask about deposit or utilities or house rules. She just started making plans like the place was already hers, like my agreement was the final step rather than the first. Within an hour, she'd posted on Facebook, "Big changes coming. God is good," with a bunch of praying hands emojis. Over the next few days, I watched them celebrate their victory. Mom called twice to discuss logistics, but only their logistics. What furniture Jenna would bring, whether the kids needed to change schools, how David's commute would improve. My needs, my space, my life didn't enter the conversation except as obstacles to work around. Then I overheard another conversation, this one by accident, when I called Mom's cell and she didn't realize she'd answered. I heard her talking to Dad in the background. "Once they're in, she won't be able to say no. We'll give it 6 months for everyone to get comfortable, then we'll bring up making it permanent. Family discount on the sale." "She's always been soft-hearted," Dad replied. "She won't kick out her own niece and nephew." I hung up quietly, my hand shaking not with fear, but with vindication. This wasn't about helping Jenna through a rough patch. This was phase 1 of a plan to transfer ownership of my condo. They were already plotting phase 2 before phase 1 had even begun. When Jenna and David came by the following Sunday to take measurements, I made tea and smiled while they discussed where their furniture would go. That's when I heard it casual and careless as they stood in my kitchen. "Once we're settled, maybe we can finally relax," David said, his voice low. "No more drama like with Rachel." Jenna laughed, that dismissive little sound she made when she thought she'd won something. "Rachel was years ago. She's long gone. Probably still bitter somewhere." David shifted uncomfortably, not laughing with her, but he didn't say anything to contradict her either. Rachel. I filed the name away carefully, along with Jenna's smug tone and David's discomfort. I didn't know who Rachel was yet, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My sister had done something to this woman, something she felt entitled to dismiss, and she'd gotten away with it. Maybe Rachel and I had something in common. But first things first. I had a condo to protect, and I had exactly 6 weeks before Jenna's lease ended and they tried to take over my life. They thought I'd caved. They thought I was the same pushover. I'd always been the one who understood and accommodated and sacrificed, because that's what good daughters did. What they didn't know was that I'd already made a call, and the wheels were in motion. The morning after that Sunday visit, before I'd even had my coffee, I pulled up Sarah Chen's number in my phone. Sarah had been my realtor 3 years ago when I bought the condo, a sharp woman in her 40s who'd listened to what I wanted and found it without trying to upsell me into something bigger. She'd respected that I was buying a loan with my own money and had treated the purchase like it mattered. It had mattered. It still did. She answered on the second ring. "Emma, it's been a while. How's the condo treating you?" "Sarah, I need to sell, fast and quiet. No public MLS listing yet." There was a pause, the kind that stretched just long enough to let me know she was recalibrating. "You just bought that place 3 years ago. Is everything okay?" I appreciated that she asked, but I couldn't explain the whole mess. Let's just say family complications. I need a cash buyer and a quick close. Can you help me? Her tone shifted immediately into professional mode, all business. "I understand. Let me help you. I'll list it in our private network first, and there are some exclusive Facebook groups for serious buyers in the downtown area. Motivated sellers usually get quick responses there, and the buyers tend to be more committed." "How quick are we talking?" "If we find the right buyer, 10 to 12 days from acceptance to closing. Aggressive but doable with cash." 10 to 12 days. Jenna's lease ended in mid-January, which gave me about 2.5 weeks. The math worked barely as long as nothing went wrong. "What about price?" Sarah asked. $300,000, fair market value. I'm not trying to make a profit, I just need out." "You'll lose negotiating power going in that hot. Buyers will know you're motivated." "I don't care about extra money, Sarah. I care about speed and certainty. Cash only. No contingencies. They can move in the day after closing. I'll do a pre-inspection myself, so there are no surprises." I could almost hear her making notes. "Okay, I'll get the paperwork started today and have it listed in the private groups by this afternoon. I'll specify cash buyers only, quick close preferred, immediate occupancy available." "What's your absolute deadline?" "Mid-January, before the 15th if possible." "Got it. I'll make it happen, Emma." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen counter staring at my coffee and trying not to think too hard about what I was doing. This condo represented 8 years of my life. Every square foot had a memory attached to it, a sacrifice that had made it possible. The kitchen where I'd learned to cook real meals instead of surviving on ramen. The bedroom where I'd finally felt safe. The balcony where I'd watched the city and reminded myself that I'd climbed high enough to see beyond everything that had tried to keep me small. That evening, after Sarah confirmed the listing was live, I walked through the condo slowly. I touched the walls I'd painted a soft gray because it felt peaceful. I ran my fingers along the curtains I'd chosen because they let in light without sacrificing privacy. I stood in front of the bookshelf I'd assembled myself, every shelf holding books I'd actually read, things I'd chosen because they interested me, not because anyone told me I should. Conflicted didn't begin to cover what I felt. This place held so much of my effort, so many of my dreams. But I understood something now with perfect clarity. If I let them move in, I wouldn't just lose the condo eventually. I'd lose myself in the process. I'd spend 6 months being made to feel guilty for taking up space in my own home. I'd watch Jenna rearrange my furniture and my life to suit her needs. I'd become invisible in the one place I'd ever been allowed to exist fully. I could always buy another home, save up again, start over, rebuild. But I couldn't buy back my dignity once I'd let them grind it into dust. I couldn't buy back the part of myself that would break if I became their doormat one more time. They thought I was weak, thought I was predictable, thought they could manipulate me the same way they always had because it had always worked before. But they'd made a miscalculation. They'd backed me into a corner, and they'd forgotten that the weakest person in any family, the one who's been overlooked and underestimated her entire life, is actually the most dangerous person in the room. Because she has nothing left to lose. My phone buzzed with an email. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and my heart jumped. Already got 3 inquiries, the email read. Very fast response. One person is particularly interested. Name Rachel Thompson. She's a realtor herself, wants to meet you directly. Says it's personal. I stared at that name. Rachel Thompson. Rachel. I pulled up my laptop and searched my memory for where I'd heard it. Then it clicked. Jenna and David in my kitchen talking carelessly while measuring my space for their furniture. No more drama like with Rachel. Rachel was years ago. She's long gone. Probably still bitter. I typed the name into Facebook, adding realtor and my city. Several profiles came up, but one stood out. A professional headshot, confident smile bio that read, helping you find home since 2015. I clicked through to her public posts. Recent photos showed her at open houses, shaking hands at closings, living what looked like a successful, independent life. The same Rachel my sister had dismissed with a laugh. The same Rachel David had looked uncomfortable discussing. The same Rachel who now wanted to buy my condo and said it was personal. In my family, I'd learned early that there were no coincidences. Everything happened for a reason, and that reason usually involved someone getting hurt. But maybe, just maybe this time, the someone getting hurt wouldn't be me. The listing went live on Tuesday morning. By Wednesday evening, I had 3 serious buyers. But one name kept nagging at me, Rachel Thompson. The same Rachel my sister had laughed about. Coincidence, I didn't believe in those anymore. New Year's Day arrived with Jenna's announcement plastered across my Facebook feed. I'd been checking her profile obsessively since agreeing to let them move in, waiting to see how she'd spin this story. I wasn't disappointed. The post appeared at 9 in the morning, clearly timed for maximum visibility. She'd driven downtown to take a professional quality photo of the building from across the street, the morning light making the glass and brick look almost golden. The caption made my stomach turn. Big announcement. We're moving into this gorgeous downtown condo. Can't believe this is really happening. Sometimes dreams do come true. She'd added a house emoji, a sparkle emoji, and praying hands. Thank you to my amazing family for always supporting us. Special shout out to Mom and Dad for believing in us. Can't wait to host Thanksgiving here next year. The kids will love living downtown. Then, as if that wasn't enough, she'd tagged the location. Not just the building name, but the full address. The Edison Lofts, 428 Market Street, Unit 3B. My exact unit. She'd essentially published my home address to her 347 Facebook friends, a security risk that would have horrified me under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances, and I found myself staring at that location tag with something close to gratitude. Within an hour, 47 people had liked it. 23 comments rolled in, friends congratulating her on this massive life upgrade. You deserve this, wrote someone named Melissa with 3 heart emojis. So happy for you, that building is amazing, commented a former coworker. God is so good, added someone from her church group. Jenna responded to every single comment, basking in the attention like it was sunlight she'd been deprived of her entire life. She posted Instagram stories throughout the day. A video of boxes stacked in her current apartment with the caption, Moving day soon. A photo of Mason and Lily looking excited with new adventures for these two. She used hashtags, new, beginnings blessed downtown, living dreams come true. I screenshot every post, every story, every comment. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Evidence and saved them all methodically. She was celebrating moving into my home, the one I'd bought with 8 years of sacrifice, and she was doing it as if it were her achievement, her blessing, her dream coming true. Let her enjoy it, I thought, reading through the comments again. The higher the hope, the harder the fall. Sunday came, and Jenna apparently couldn't contain herself at church either. Mom called me that afternoon, her voice bright with secondhand excitement. You should have seen Jenna after service today. Everyone's so happy for her about the move. What did she tell them? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Just that they're moving downtown to a beautiful condo. Such a blessing for the family. Mom paused. She said it was a family arrangement, didn't get into specifics. You know how people can be nosy about finances. A family arrangement. As if it were some mutual decision we'd all made together rather than a scheme I'd overheard and pretended to go along with. I wondered if anyone had asked whose condo it was, whether Jenna's vague answers had raised any eyebrows. Probably not. People heard what they wanted to hear, saw what they wanted to see. Dad mentioned it too when he called on Monday to discuss logistics. The neighbors have been asking about Jenna's move. We told them she's going to a lovely place downtown. We're very proud. Proud. Of what, exactly? Of successfully manipulating me into agreeing to something I'd never have agreed to if I'd been asked honestly. Of raising a daughter who could celebrate someone else's sacrifice as her own achievement. My name never came up in any of these conversations. Not once. I was invisible in the narrative of my own condo, erased from the story like I'd never existed. They'd written me out completely, and somehow that hurt worse than everything else combined. I checked Jenna's Facebook, obsessively watching the likes climb, the comments multiply. She was performing her success for an audience of hundreds, and none of them knew the truth. None of them knew this was my home. She was claiming my years of work she was celebrating as her own blessing. On Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. Sarah's name on the screen made my pulse quicken. Emma Rachel Thompson is very serious about your place. She's offering $320,020 over asking, all cash. She wants to close as fast as possible. Sarah paused. But she specifically wants to meet you first, says it's important. Why does she want to meet me? She wouldn't tell me details, but I got the sense. Sarah hesitated. I think she saw your sister's Facebook post. She mentioned the address matching said she had a personal interest in the property. My heart started racing. Rachel had seen Jenna's post. She'd seen my sister celebrating her move to 428 Market Street, Unit 3B, and she'd connected it to my listing. Whatever history existed between Rachel and my sister, it was about to become very relevant. Set up the meeting, I said. Tomorrow if possible. I can do 10 o'clock at the Starbucks on 5th Street. Does that work? Perfect. After we hung up, I pulled up Jenna's post one more time. 47 likes had grown to 63. The comments kept coming, a steady stream of congratulations and well wishes. She'd tagged the exact address, broadcast her triumph to hundreds of people, counted her chickens before a single one had hatched. My sister's post had 47 likes and counting. She was tagging the address, celebrating her dream come true, thanking our parents for their support. She had no idea she'd just advertised her own humiliation to hundreds of people, and one person in particular was paying very close attention. I arrived at the Starbucks 15 minutes early, claimed a corner table in the back where I could watch the entrance, and ordered a coffee I had no intention of drinking. My hands were shaking slightly, so I kept them wrapped around the cup to hide it. This meeting could change everything, or it could be nothing. I didn't know which possibility scared me more. At exactly 10 o'clock, a woman walked through the door and scanned the room with the practiced ease of someone who spent her life sizing up properties and people. Early 40s, I guessed. Well-dressed in a way that looked effortless, but probably wasn't tailored wool coat designer bag hair styled in a sleek bob that framed her face. She carried herself like someone who'd been knocked down and gotten back up stronger. When her eyes found mine, she smiled, and I saw recognition there. Sarah must have described me well. "Emma?" she asked as she approached. "I'm Rachel Thompson. Thank you for meeting me." Her handshake was firm, confident. We made small talk while she ordered her coffee, discussing the weather and downtown parking, the kind of meaningless conversation that fills space while both parties decide how honest they're going to be. When she sat down across from me, she launched into what sounded like a rehearsed pitch. "I'm a realtor with Century 21, specialize in downtown properties. I've been looking for an investment property, and yours fits my criteria perfectly." She took a sip of her latte. "I can offer $320,000 all cash, close in 10 days. I know that's over your asking price, but I really want this property." I studied her face, looking for the truth beneath the professional veneer. Something wasn't adding up. Realtors didn't typically offer $20,000 over asking for investment properties, especially not ones they could tour and inspect at their leisure. "That's very generous," I said carefully. "Can I ask why you're so interested in this particular condo? There are 3 other units for sale in the same building." Rachel set down her cup and looked at me for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Can I be completely honest with you? Please." She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward me. It was Jenna's New Year's Day post, the one with the building photo and all the emojis and the location tag broadcasting my address to the world. "I saw this yesterday," Rachel said quietly. "Someone celebrating moving into this exact address. The woman who posted it, I don't know her well personally, but I know her husband." She paused and something flickered across her face. "Very well. He used to be my husband, until 5 years ago, until she came along." The coffee shop seemed to go quiet around us. I stared at her, then at the phone screen showing my sister's smiling face, then back at Rachel. "You're Rachel," I said. "The Rachel my sister mentioned." I assume she didn't speak highly of me. Rachel's voice was controlled, but I heard the edge underneath. "They never do." "She said you were long gone, laughed about it, said there was no more drama." "Of course she did." Rachel took a breath, composing herself. "David and I were married for 8 years. I thought we were happy. Then he met your sister at a church potluck 5 years ago. She was married to someone else at the time, too." She paused, letting that sink in. "They started an affair. When I found out, I filed for divorce. Got a very good settlement because I was smart about documentation. She left her first husband, too. They got together, played happy family, and I moved on. Built my business. Remarried, actually. I'm much happier now." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "But I never forgot how smug she was. How she acted like she'd won some prize by destroying 2 marriages. The silence stretched between us as I processed this. Jenna had been married before David. Had an affair, my parents had never mentioned it. But then they wouldn't. That would make their golden child look tarnished. "Look, I'll be direct," Rachel said, leaning forward. "When I saw your listing in the real estate group, I thought it was a nice property. Then yesterday I saw her post. Same address, same building. Unit 3B. She thinks she's moving into this condo. But you're selling it." Her eyes met mine. "Does she know?" "No, she doesn't." "Why are you selling?" I could have lied, could have kept it vague. But something about Rachel's directness, her honesty about her own pain, made me want to match it. "My family is pressuring me to let her move in. I overheard them plotting about it at Christmas. They want to get her settled, then gradually transfer ownership. They think I'm too weak to say no once she's there." Rachel's expression shifted, understanding dawning. "And instead of letting them take it, you're selling it first. What if you sold it to me? Then she'd be moving into your home instead of mine." We both smiled, then slowly as the full picture came into focus. 2 women who'd been wronged by the same person sitting in a coffee shop, planning something that felt like justice. "I want to be clear," Rachel said. "I'm over David, happily remarried. This isn't about winning him back. But your sister has never faced a single consequence for what she did. She broke up 2 marriages and got rewarded with sympathy and a fresh start. I heard through mutual friends she's been struggling financially. I'm guessing that's why she needs your place. She scammed people in an MLM scheme, I said. Owes about $75,000. Rachel's eyes widened. I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me. She straightened in her chair, all business now. $320,000. Cash. Close on January 17th, before they can move anything in. And when they show up with their moving truck, I'll be there to greet them personally. I extended my hand across the table. I think we have a deal, Rachel. Her grip was strong, certain. We exchanged phone numbers, agreed that Sarah would handle the paperwork, made plans for the inspection. As we stood to leave, Rachel touched my arm. You know, I spent years being angry, she said. Then I realized living well is the best revenge. But this... She smiled genuinely this time. This is a close second. We shook hands over coffee. Rachel had her revenge. I had my freedom. And my sister. She had no idea that her Facebook flex tagging the address and bragging to the world had just connected 2 women she'd wronged. The paperwork was signed within 72 hours. By the time my sister packed her first box, the condo no longer belonged to me. I parked across the street from the building at 9:30 Saturday morning, early enough to watch everything unfold, but far enough away to stay invisible. I'd turned off my phone the night before, knowing what was coming, and sat in my car with tinted windows, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. This was it. The moment everything I'd carefully orchestrated would either work perfectly or blow up in my face. The U-Haul arrived at 10 o'clock, exactly, lumbering down the street and double parking in front of the building with its hazard lights blinking. Jenna climbed out of the passenger side, practically bouncing with excitement, while David killed the engine. My parents' car pulled up behind them, and I watched Mom and Dad get out wearing work gloves, ready to help carry boxes. Mason and Lily were strapped into car seats in Jenna's SUV, craning their necks to see the building their mother had been talking about for weeks. Jenna had posted an Instagram story at 7 that morning. I'd seen it before turning off my phone. A photo of packed boxes with the caption, "Moving Day, New Chapter, Starts Today," followed by a house emoji and a moving box emoji. She was documenting every moment of what she thought was her triumph. Neighbors were already watching from windows and balconies. Moving day in a downtown building always drew attention. People curious about who was coming or going, mentally calculating property values and judging furniture choices. Today they were going to get a show worth watching. Jenna approached the main entrance with the key I'd given her 2 weeks ago, the one I'd claimed was for measuring furniture and planning layouts. She held it up like a trophy, grinning at her kids. "This is your new home." I could hear her voice carrying across the street, high and excited. They crowded into the elevator, the whole family plus my parents, and I knew they were riding up to the 4th floor with their hearts full of plans and expectations. I watched the moving truck driver lean against his vehicle, checking his phone, waiting for someone to tell him where to start unloading. A few minutes later, I saw movement on the 4th floor exterior walkway visible from my vantage point. Jenna led the group to Unit 3B, still holding that key, still smiling. She inserted it into the lock with confidence. It didn't turn. Even from across the street, I could see her confusion. She pulled the key out, looked at it, tried again. Jiggled it. Tried to force it. David leaned in, saying something I couldn't hear. Jenna's voice rose, frustrated. "This is the one she gave me." My parents exchanged worried glances. Mom pulled out her phone, probably to call me. Good luck with that. Then the door opened from the inside. Rachel stood there in dark jeans and a cream cashmere sweater, holding a coffee mug like she'd just been enjoying a peaceful Saturday morning in her new home. Because she had been. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup subtle but flawless. She looked put together and calm and completely in control, the polar opposite of my sister's frantic confusion. I couldn't hear the exact words from my car, but I saw Jenna's mouth moving, saw Rachel respond calmly, saw Rachel show her phone screen to display what must have been the property deed. Then I saw David's face go absolutely white as recognition hit him like a physical blow. The confrontation escalated fast. Jenna started screaming, her voice carrying across the street now. Other residents emerged from their units drawn by the commotion. I saw phones come out, recording devices lifted. David tried to pull Jenna away from the door, but she clung to the frame like it was a life raft. My parents stood frozen, their faces cycling through confusion, horror, and dawning humiliation. Rachel remained in the doorway, completely composed, occasionally taking sips from her coffee mug. She said something to David that made him flinch. I didn't need to hear the words to know she was reminding him of everything he'd said to her 5 years ago. Every promise he'd broken, every cruel assumption he'd made about her future. The moving truck driver had gotten out of his vehicle now, watching the scene with the fascinated horror of someone witnessing a car crash. Neighbors lined the walkway and leaned out of windows. Someone's phone was definitely recording. Finally, David managed to physically move Jenna away from the door. She was sobbing now, hysterical, still screaming something about setups and betrayal. My parents followed them to the elevator, their shoulders hunched with shame. The moving truck driver climbed back into his cab, probably relieved he wouldn't have to carry anything after all. Rachel stood in the doorway for another moment, surveying the chaos she'd helped create. Then she looked directly across the street to where my car was parked. I don't know how she knew I was there, but she did. She raised her coffee mug in a small, deliberate toast, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I raised my hand in acknowledgement, though I'm not sure she could see me through the tinted glass. Mission accomplished. I watched my sister collapse on the sidewalk, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I saw my parents' faces, shock giving way to shame as they realized neighbors were watching, filming, bearing witness to the humiliation. I saw David drag his family toward their vehicles while the moving truck pulled away, its hazard lights still blinking, and I saw Rachel in the window of what was now her condo, raising her coffee mug to me in a silent toast. Mission accomplished. But their calls were about to start, and I had no intention of answering. I drove straight to my friend Kate's house, the one person I'd told about the plan. She lived 20 minutes away in a quiet neighborhood where I could hide and watch the fallout unfold. When I pulled into her driveway, my phone was already lighting up like a strobe light in the cup holder, call after call rolling in with barely a breath between them. Kate opened the door before I could knock, took one look at my face and said, "It happened. It happened." She led me to her kitchen table, poured coffee, neither of us would drink, and I set my phone face up between us. We both stared at it like it was a bomb with a visible timer. The calls started at 10:47, exactly 12 minutes after Rachel would have opened that door. Mom's name flashed across the screen first, then again, then again. I let it go to voicemail. The phone stopped buzzing for maybe 30 seconds before Dad's name appeared. Then Jenna's. Then Mom again. Kate raised her eyebrows. "You're really not answering?" "Not yet." Within 2 hours, the number climbed to 98. 98 times my family tried to reach me, and 98 times I watched the call go unanswered. Mom called 34 times, Dad 21, Jenna 43, which somehow didn't surprise me. She'd always been the one who demanded immediate response, who couldn't stand being ignored. I forced myself to listen to the first few voicemails, needing to hear the progression, the evolution from shock to rage. Mom's voice at 10:47 trembled with confusion. "Honey, please call back. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. That woman says she owns your condo. She says she bought it. She's David's ex-wife. Did you know that? Did you know who she was? Call me immediately. We need to fix this." Dad at 11:03 sounded harder, more demanding. "We need to talk immediately. This is serious. Your sister is devastated. Whatever's going on, we need to discuss it. Call me back right now." Jenna at 11:15 was barely coherent through her sobbing. "What did you do? You sold it to her. To David's ex-wife. Call me right now, or I swear I'm coming to your apartment." Each voicemail felt like a small victory and a small wound at the same time. These were still my parents, still my sister, still the people who'd raised me, even if they'd never quite loved me the way I needed. The guilt sat heavy in my chest. Decades of conditioning telling me to pick up the phone, to smooth things over, to fix it, like I always fixed things. But I didn't. Around noon, the tone shifted dramatically. The desperation turned to anger, the confusion to accusation. Mom, at 12:34. This is cruel, Emma. How could you do this to your sister, to your family? We're humiliated. Neighbors saw everything. People were filming. Do you understand what you've done? Dad, at 1:15, you've crossed a line, a serious line. We need to discuss this face to face. You owe us an explanation. You owe your sister an apology. The text messages came in waves between the calls, a relentless flood of words I could see preview on my locked screen. Jenna's were the worst, each one more vicious than the last. You're a snake. You planned this with that bitch. You humiliated us in front of everyone. Neighbors were filming. You're dead to me. Dead. I will never forgive you. I hope you're happy. My kids are crying because we have nowhere to go. Dad texted too, his words dripping with the same guilt trip tactics that had worked on me my entire life. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. This is the thanks we get for raising you. I stared at that message for a long time. What had they done for me exactly? What thanks did they deserve? I couldn't think of a single thing they'd given me that hadn't come with conditions that hadn't been designed to keep me small and compliant and grateful for scraps. Even my aunt texted, clearly recruited by my parents for reinforcement. Family should forgive. Call your mother. Kate watched me read the messages, watched my face cycle through emotions I couldn't name. You okay? She finally asked. I will be. I turned the phone face down, but I could still hear it buzzing against the table, feel it vibrating through the wood. The number kept climbing. 50, 70, 85, 98. They were going to steal from me, I said out loud, needing to hear the words. They didn't ask. They plotted. They planned to manipulate me into giving up my home. This isn't revenge, Kate said quietly. No, it's self-preservation. The calls finally stopped around midnight. 98 missed calls, dozens of text messages, voicemails that started with tears and ended with threats. I listened to none of them after those first few. Kate poured us both wine, raised her glass. To freedom, she said. To boundaries, I replied. For 30 years, I'd answered every time they called. For 30 years, I'd dropped everything to help, to accommodate, to understand. I'd made myself smaller so they could feel bigger, made myself invisible so they could shine. Tonight, I turned off my phone, completely finished my wine, and slept on Kate's couch better than I had in months. Because their desperation was nothing compared to what was coming next. I woke up Sunday morning to a text from Lisa, a neighbor who lived 2 doors down from my parents. We'd been friendly over the years, had exchanged pleasantries at holiday gatherings, but we weren't close. The fact that she was reaching out now told me everything I needed to know. Just FYI, they're screaming at your parents' house. Wanted you to know. You okay? I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. I'm okay. Thanks for letting me know. What Lisa couldn't know, what none of the neighbors could know, was that this was exactly what I'd expected. When you take away something people feel entitled to, they don't come together in solidarity. They turn on each other looking for someone to blame. Lisa's next text came with more detail. Started around 6 last night when they got back. Still going. Your sister's voice is carrying through the walls. I'm sorry you're dealing with whatever this is. I could picture it perfectly. The 4 of them in my parents' living room, the same room where they'd plotted against me at Christmas, now transformed into a battlefield. Jenna would have started it because she always started things when she didn't get her way. Later, through a combination of Lisa's updates and my mother's own detailed voicemail left at 2 a.m. when she was apparently too angry to sleep, I pieced together exactly how it had unfolded. Jenna had blamed them first. You promised this would work. You said she'd never say no. You said she was too nice. her voice loud enough that Lisa could hear specific words through the shared wall. Mom had gone defensive immediately, her voice shrill with panic. "We thought she'd be reasonable. She's never stood up to us before. How were we supposed to know she'd do something like this?" Then Dad had made the mistake of pointing out the obvious. "If you hadn't posted it all over Facebook with the exact address, maybe this wouldn't have blown up so publicly." That's when Jenna had apparently lost it completely. "So now it's my fault you're the ones who came up with this whole plan. You're the ones who said it would work." "We were trying to help you," Dad had shouted back, his voice carrying an edge I recognized from my own childhood, the one that meant he was done being patient. "Because you can't manage your own life. You never could." David had tried to calm everyone down, suggesting they focus on finding a hotel for the night somewhere for the kids to sleep. That's when Jenna had turned on him like a wounded animal cornered. "And you, your ex-wife. How convenient that she bought it. Did you tell her? Did you set this up?" According to Lisa's texts, David had sounded exhausted when he insisted he hadn't spoken to Rachel in 5 years, that she'd blocked him on everything. Jenna hadn't believed him. "This is too perfect. This is too convenient." What struck me most hearing about it secondhand was that for the first time in my entire life they weren't united. Every previous conflict, every time I'd needed something or questioned something or tried to establish any boundary at all, they'd stood together like a wall. Mom, Dad and Jenna presenting a united front that made me feel crazy for thinking I deserved better. Now they were wolves turning on each other, and the sound of it was almost satisfying. Dad had apparently gone after Mom next. If you hadn't always bailed her out, thrown money at every problem, she'd be independent by now. She'd have her own place. Mom had fired back. "You always said we'd figure it out later." "Well, it's later. We're out of options." "Because you drained our retirement accounts helping her." Jenna had tried to defend herself, pointing out that they'd told her not to worry about the MLM money, that they'd said they'd handle it. Mom had thrown that back in her face, mentioning the stupid scheme and the burned bridges and all the money they'd already spent trying to fix her mistakes. Lisa had texted that she'd seen David take the kids outside to the car around 8, sitting with them in the driveway while the adults screamed at each other inside. Mason and Lily didn't need to hear, that didn't need to learn that family love came with conditions and price tags. But it was Mom's voicemail at 2 a.m. that gave me the most insight into how completely I'd dismantled their narrative. She'd been crying, her words slurred either with exhaustion or whine, and somewhere in the rambling accusations, she'd had a revelation. "You knew," she'd said, her voice suddenly clear with understanding. "You overheard us at Christmas. That's why you agreed so easily. You were buying time. You played us. For 3 weeks you smiled and nodded and planned your revenge, and we never saw it coming." There was a long pause in the voicemail, and I could hear Dad's voice in the background, incredulous. "She played us from the beginning. She's just like you," Mom had said to Dad, bitter and accusing. "Cold, calculating. She learned it from you." I'd listened to that part 3 times, struck by the irony. They'd taught me to be quiet, to be accommodating, to always put them first. They'd shown me how to manipulate by being manipulated my entire life. And now that I'd finally used those lessons, they were shocked by the results. They fought until 2 a.m. Neighbors heard every word. And for the first time in their lives, they weren't united against me. They were tearing each other apart. But their meltdown was only the beginning. Because the next morning, my sister decided if she couldn't have the condo, she'd destroy my reputation instead. I turned my phone back on Sunday morning and immediately regretted it. Jenna's Facebook post was the first thing I saw posted at 9 o'clock sharp, with the kind of calculated timing that suggested she'd been awake planning it since dawn. The post opened with a crying selfie, her face red and puffy, a tissue clutched in one hand. She'd clearly spent time getting the angle just right to maximize the sympathy factor. The text that followed was a masterpiece of manipulation. "I need to share what happened to my family yesterday. I'm heartbroken, but people deserve to know the truth. My own sister betrayed us in the cruelest way possible. After promising to help us when our lease ended after we gave up our apartment and paid deposits, she sold our future home to my husband's ex-wife out of pure spite. She orchestrated this humiliation deliberately, didn't even have the decency to tell us. We showed up with a moving truck, our children excited only to be ambushed. We're now homeless because we trusted family. Family is supposed to support each other, lift each other up. Instead, she chose cruelty and revenge. I'm heartbroken. My children are traumatized. All because she couldn't share what she has. She'd attached 3 photos. The crying selfie, a picture of Mason and Lily looking sad in the car, a shot of the U-Haul truck loaded with boxes. The visual evidence of her victimhood carefully curated for maximum impact. Within 2 hours, 200 people had commented and 50 had shared it. I sat at Kate's kitchen table watching the numbers climb, my coffee going cold in front of me. The comments split exactly as I'd expected. Some people bought the narrative immediately. That's awful, who does that to family? And praying for you and the kids, and I can't believe your own sister would do this. Others asked the questions Jenna was deliberately not answering. Wait, it was her condo. Did you pay for it? And why did you give up your apartment before you had keys? I watched Jenna respond to every supportive comment with gratitude and ignore every critical question. Then I watched her start deleting the critical ones, entirely reshaping the narrative in real time by eliminating any voice that didn't support her version of events. My parents went to church that morning. Part of me had expected them to hide in shame, but I should have known better. They needed allies, needed sympathy, needed to control the story before it controlled them. According to 3 different people who texted me throughout the day, Mom had been in tears in the parking lot after the service. Our daughter has abandoned all family values. She'd told her Bible study friends, her voice breaking. She's selfish and heartless, after everything we sacrificed for her. Dad had worked the men's group, his approach more anger than tears. Family means nothing to her anymore. She values money over her own sister, over her niece and nephew. They painted me as the prodigal daughter, the one who'd strayed from the path of righteousness and family loyalty. They painted themselves as suffering parents who'd done everything right and been rewarded with betrayal. Some people believed them immediately. Others, thank God, were more skeptical. By Monday afternoon, the entire community was talking about it. Someone had posted in the Downtown Neighbors Facebook group asking if anyone else was following the drama, and 300 comments had appeared within hours. I read through them all, taking screenshots of everything, watching strangers debate my character and my choices based on one side of a story they didn't understand. Family should always help each other no matter what. She's cold-hearted, wrote someone who'd never met me. Hold up. It was her condo that she bought. They tried to take it. Wrote someone who'd actually read between the lines. The arguments escalated. People bringing up the kids as if I'd personally traumatized Mason and Lily rather than their parents who'd made promises they couldn't keep. People mentioning the MLM fraud, which surprised me because I hadn't told anyone about that yet. Apparently, some of Jenna's victims were in these same groups watching this unfold and seeing parallels. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from acquaintances. Hey, is what your sister posted true? And I saw something on Facebook, wanted to check in, and your mom called me crying, what's going on? I didn't respond to any of them. Not yet. I was learning something valuable about human nature, about who would believe the worst of me without asking, about who would pause and question, about who would reach out with genuine concern, versus who just wanted gossip. Some people I'd considered friends immediately took my family's side. That hurt more than I wanted to admit, but it also told me everything I needed to know about the depth of those friendships. The rumors grew more exaggerated with each retelling. Someone said I'd kicked out my pregnant sister, which wasn't true on multiple levels. Someone else said I'd always been jealous of Jenna's perfect life, which was such a profound misunderstanding of reality that I almost laughed. I watched it all from a distance, silent and observing, taking screenshots of every post, every comment, every share. They thought they were destroying my reputation, turning the community against me, making me into a villain. What they didn't realize was that they were creating a detailed record of their own behavior, their own lies, their own willingness to manipulate truth for sympathy. The smear campaign was in full swing. My sister's post had 200 shares. My mother was crying to anyone who'd listen. Church members were whispering, and I was labeled the villain in a story where they conveniently forgot one detail. It was my condo, earned with my money, that they tried to steal. But their lies were about to backfire because I had receipts they didn't know existed. Uncle Mike's call came Tuesday morning while I was still scrolling through screenshots of my family's lies. His voice was tight with urgency, breathless in a way that made my stomach drop. "I need to see you. Now. I found something at your parents' house. You need to see this immediately." "What is it?" "Not over the phone. Meet me at that diner on Route 9 in 1 hour." I drove there with my mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. Uncle Mike was already waiting in a back booth when I arrived, a manila folder sitting on the table between his coffee cup and untouched plate of eggs. His face looked grim. "Your parents asked me to help them move some boxes to storage yesterday," he said as I slid into the booth across from him. "I was trying to reconcile with them after all these years. Thought maybe we could fix things." He tapped the folder. "I found this when I was sorting through their office. When I saw your name on it, I opened it. Emma, you need to see what they were planning." He slid the folder across the table. My hands were already shaking when I opened it. The first page was a sale agreement. Not a draft, not a template someone had pulled from the internet. A fully completed contract with every blank filled in, professional and official looking, missing only one thing: my signature. I stared at the date. December 10th. 2 weeks before Christmas dinner. 2 weeks before I'd overheard them plotting. They'd prepared this contract before they'd even invited me over for turkey and pie, before they'd smiled at me across the table and pretended we were a normal family. The terms made my vision blur. Seller, my full legal name spelled correctly, my address listed. Buyer, Jenna's full legal name. Sale price $50,000 for a condo worth $300,000. Payment terms $5,000 down, the remaining $45,000 paid over 10 years at 0% interest. They'd structured it to look legitimate while essentially stealing $250,000 from me over a decade. But there was more. Paper-clipped to the contract were handwritten notes in my father's distinctive cramped writing. A timeline. A strategy. Move in Jan 15. Wait 6 months. Present contract July. Use guilt about kids' school. And below that, if she refuses, remind her kids will be homeless. Use church pressure. Last resort squatters' rights claim. They'd planned every step, every manipulation, every pressure point. Documented it like a business strategy, like I was a problem to be solved rather than a daughter with rights. "There's something else," Uncle Mike said quietly. "Look at the back pages." I flipped through and felt my stomach turn. Practice sheets. Lined paper covered with attempts at my signature, each one getting closer to the real thing. 20, maybe 30 attempts, progressively more accurate. They'd been practicing forging my name. "They were going to forge my signature." My voice came out strangled. Uncle Mike nodded. "Or trick you into signing? There's notes about mobile notary services about getting you to sign during an emotional moment. Look at this one." He pointed to another note in Dad's handwriting. "Get her to sign at Mom's hospital appointment. She won't read carefully if upset." Mom didn't have any hospital appointments. They were planning to fake a medical emergency to use my fear and concern to manipulate me into signing a document I wouldn't read carefully. The calculation of it, the cold strategic planning, made me feel sick. This wasn't just manipulation. This was fraud. Criminal fraud. If they'd succeeded, if I'd signed that contract, or if they'd forged my signature and filed it with the county, I would have had to sue my own family to prove it was fake. $20,000 minimum in legal fees. Months of stress. Public scandal. Family destruction. And even then, no guarantee I'd win. My instinct to sell immediately, My gut feeling that something was deeply wrong had saved me from all of that. "I made copies," Uncle Mike said. "You should keep these. Talk to a lawyer. This is serious, Emma." "Why are you helping me?" I asked, my voice still shaky. "You and Dad haven't spoken in 10 years. "Because he did the same thing to me." Uncle Mike's face hardened. "Different schemes, same tactics. He tried to guilt me into signing over part of my business. When I refused and set boundaries, I got cut off. Became the villain in the family story." He paused. "I don't want you to go through what I did. You deserve to know what they're capable of." I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and photographed every page. The contract, the notes, the practice signatures, evidence of premeditated fraud. "One more thing," Uncle Mike said. "That MLM fraud your sister did, your parents knew. There's emails in here between them and some of the victims promising to make things right, asking for patience." Of course they knew. Of course they'd been covering for her, trying to clean up her mess with my money, my home, my future. The contract was dated December 10th, 2 weeks before they even invited me to Christmas dinner. This wasn't a plan, this was a trap. And those signature practice sheets. They hadn't just plotted to take my home, they'd plotted to commit fraud. For the first time I realized I didn't just dodge a bullet, I dodged a bomb. I drove home from the diner with Uncle Mike's folder on the passenger seat, too dangerous to look at while driving, but impossible to ignore. Once inside my apartment, I spread everything across my dining table and spent the entire evening organizing evidence like I was building a legal case, which in a way I was. Property deed showing my name as sole owner. Mortgage statements proving I'd paid every cent. Bank records with account numbers redacted but dates and amounts visible, documenting 8 years of deposits into my down payment fund. Screenshots of every social media post my family had made, every lie they'd told, every manipulation they'd attempted. And now, thanks to Uncle Mike, photos of their fraudulent contract with those chilling practiced signatures. I opened a new document and created a timeline listing every example of favoritism with specific dates and dollar amounts. 1998, 2005, 2008, 2015. A 30-year pattern laid out in black and white, undeniable and documented. Then I started writing my response. It took 3 hours and 7 drafts before I got the tone right. Not angry, though I was furious. Not pleading, though part of me still wanted them to understand. Calm, measured, factual, strong. Every word chosen carefully, every sentence crafted to tell the truth without sounding vindictive. I titled it, "My Side of the Story," with receipts. The post opened simply. "I've watched my family's version of events spread for 3 days. Here are the facts." Then I laid it out methodically. The condo in question, I bought it 3 years ago. 100% my money. Attached property deed mortgage in my name only. I worked 8 years, 2 jobs, saved $60,000 for the down payment. This condo represents every sacrifice I made to build an independent life. I listed the examples chronologically, each one a knife I'd been carrying in my chest for decades. 1998. Sister received a $25,000 car for her 16th birthday. I received permission to borrow Dad's car. 2005 sister's wedding cost $40,000, which our parents paid. When I planned to marry, I was told to just go to the courthouse because weddings aren't important. 2008, sister failed college, parents paid $15,000 for her to retake classes. Same year, I asked to borrow $5,000 for an apartment deposit and was refused. Direct quote from Dad, "You need to stand on your own feet." I added the most recent example. 2015, I bought this condo with my own money. Within 6 months, I was asked if sister could stay there. Then, I attached the evidence. Scanned images of my property deed, bank statements with sensitive information redacted but proof of payment clear. And the piece of resistance photos of their fake contract. This contract dated 2 weeks before Christmas shows their real plan forced me to sell my $300,000 condo for $50,000. Notice the practice signatures at the bottom. I continued my words, getting stronger. They didn't ask if they could move in. They told me. I overheard them plotting how to manipulate me into compliance. I sold my property bought with my money to protect myself from documented fraud. Family doesn't mean endless sacrifice without respect. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's exploitation. The conclusion took me the longest to write. If protecting my assets from a documented scheme makes me selfish, then I choose self-respect over being a doormat. To those who judged without asking my side, I hope you never have to choose between family and self-preservation. I hope your family never makes you feel like your accomplishments are communal property to redistribute. I ended with a challenge. I'm not looking for sides to be taken. I'm simply asking for the truth to be told. And for those who think I should have just helped family, I did help, for 30 years. At what point am I allowed to help myself? I added one final note. Comments are open. Unlike some posts, I won't delete questions. My cursor hovered over the post button for a full minute. Once I did this, there was no taking it back. No more staying quiet. No more being the bigger person. No more protecting them from the consequences of their own actions. I hit post at 11:47 on Wednesday night. The reaction started immediately. 50 in the first 5 minutes, the notification counter spinning so fast I couldn't track individual names. I forced myself to close my laptop to walk away to put my phone in another room. I'd said what I needed to say. Now I had to let it speak for itself. I went to bed and slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The weight of silence finally lifted from my shoulders. I hit post and closed my laptop. Within an hour, it had 300 reactions and 150 comments. Within 3 hours, local news bloggers were sharing it. The tide was beginning to turn, but my family wasn't about to let that happen without a fight. I woke Thursday morning to my phone vibrating so violently it had fallen off the nightstand. 500 notifications, 300 comments, numbers that made my heart race before I'd even had coffee. The top comment stopped me cold. Posted at 2 a.m. by Linda Morrison, my mother's best friend of 30 years. The woman who'd been at every major family event, who'd watched me grow up in my sister's shadow, who'd never said a word about what she'd witnessed until now. I've watched this family dynamic for 3 decades. I stayed silent because it wasn't my place. But after seeing Jenna's post and now this, I can't stay quiet anymore. 487 people had liked her comment. I kept reading, my coffee forgotten. Everything Emma said is true. I witnessed it all. The Sweet 16 car incident, I was there when they gave Jenna the car and told Emma she could borrow Dad's. I was at both weddings. Jenna's had ice sculptures. Emma's had courthouse steps and Olive Garden after. I told her mother years ago this favoritism would damage both daughters. She said I didn't understand because I wasn't a mother. I'm a mother of 3. I understood perfectly. But I understand this real love doesn't require one child to sacrifice endlessly for another. To Emma, I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You deserved better. My hands were shaking. Linda had known. She'd seen everything tried to intervene been dismissed. And she'd kept it to herself until now, until the evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. The replies to her comment stretched on for pages. Thank you for speaking up. This explains so much. It takes courage to tell the truth. Other family friends started adding their own observation stories I'd never known anyone had noticed. Someone remembered my college graduation, how my parents had claimed a work conflict, but had been spotted at the mall with Jenna. Someone else had always thought the different treatment was strange, but hadn't felt it was their business to say anything. Then I saw Uncle Mike's comment posted at 8 that morning and had to sit down. This is exactly why I cut contact with my brother 10 years ago. He did the same thing to me, asked me to temporarily house Jenna when she was 19 and figuring things out. After 3 months, I asked when she'd be moving out. Was told I was selfish for not helping family. Then they pressured me to let her stay rent-free indefinitely. When I said no and gave her 30 days' notice, I became the selfish brother who abandoned family. I was written out of the family, wasn't invited to holidays. My own brother stopped speaking to me. For having boundaries, for refusing to enable a grown woman. Now I see they're still playing the same games, still sacrificing one child to prop up the other. Proud of you, Emma, for standing up. I wish I'd been there for you growing up. I didn't know it was this bad. This wasn't just about me. This was a pattern, a multi-generational system of manipulation and guilt. Anyone who set boundaries got cut off, labeled selfish, written out of the family story. Uncle Mike had tried to help Jenna, had given her a place to stay, and when he'd asked for a reasonable end date, he'd been exiled for a decade. Other relatives I barely knew started commenting. A cousin I'd met maybe twice at weddings mentioned that she'd always wondered why I never came to family events, that my parents had always said I was too busy. I'd never been invited to those events. They'd simply erased me and told everyone I'd chosen not to come. By Thursday evening, the entire tone had shifted. I watched it happen in real time, the narrative flipping like a switch had been thrown. People went back to Jenna's original post and started asking the questions she'd been deleting. Wait, you never paid for that condo, it was always hers. So she worked 8 years to buy it and you expected her to just give it away. Y'all tried to guilt her into giving away a $300,000 property she earned. That's not family, that's robbery. Some of Jenna's original supporters quietly deleted their supportive comments or stopped engaging entirely. Church members who'd initially rallied around my parents went silent. One church elder even commented on my post directly. "We were too quick to judge. I apologize. This is clearly more complicated than presented." Jenna's post was getting what the internet called ratioed, more critical comments than supportive ones, her narrative crumbling under the weight of actual facts and documented evidence. A local blogger wrote an entire piece about it. The downtown condo drama, when family boundaries become necessary. 10,000 views in a single day. Local mom groups were discussing it in their private forums, with many sharing their own stories of family financial exploitation. Jenna tried to post another response, something about how I was still lying, and she had her own evidence. The comments immediately challenged her. "Where's your evidence? Show the receipts like she did. Why didn't you mention she bought that condo herself?" She deleted the post within an hour. The tables were turning. Linda's comment had 500 likes. Uncle Mike's story went viral in local groups. Even some of my sister's friends were quietly unfriending her, but my parents weren't about to accept this quietly, and neither was my sister. They were about to escalate in a way I never saw coming. I was still riding the high of public support when the certified letter arrived Friday morning. The postal worker made me sign for it, which immediately sent my anxiety spiking. Certified mail meant something serious, something that required proof of delivery. The envelope bore the letterhead of Patterson and Associates, attorneys at law. My hands shook as I opened it, the thick legal paper crackling in the silence of my kitchen. Cease and desist. The words jumped out at me in bold typeface, followed by the names of all 3 clients, my mother, my father, and my sister. They'd banded together, pooled their resources, hired a lawyer to come after me. The claims were listed in dense legal language designed to intimidate. Defamation of character. Alleging my Facebook post contained false statements that damaged their reputations. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, claiming I'd deliberately caused them psychological harm through calculated public humiliation. Breach of implied contract, asserting I'd verbally agreed to let Jenna live in the condo and then reneged. The demands section made my vision blur. Remove the Facebook post within 48 hours. Issue a public apology on the same platform. Pay $25,000 in compensatory damages. The letter concluded with a threat that failure to comply would result in a lawsuit seeking damages exceeding $100,000 plus attorney fees. 7 days. I had 7 days to comply or face legal action. I read it 3 times each pass, making my heart pound harder. This was real. Lawyers, court, Public records. Potential financial ruin. Everything I'd worked for could be destroyed by legal fees alone, even if I won. The letter also listed additional claims they were considering. Fraudulent conveyance, alleging I'd sold the property specifically to avoid family obligations. Tortious interference, claiming I'd deliberately disrupted their housing plans. Terms I didn't fully understand, but that sounded ominous, wrapped in legal jargon. That evening, my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. I should have let it go to voicemail, but some part of me still wanted to hear what he'd say, still wanted to believe this could be resolved. Hello? You received the letter. His voice was cold formal, nothing like the father who'd raised me. Yes. You brought this on yourself. Take down that post and apologize publicly, or we'll see you in court. Mom's voice carried from the background, loud and shrill. How could you air our private family matters publicly? You humiliated us. You aired them first, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Jenna's post was public. That was different. She was hurting, reaching out for support. You're being vindictive. I was telling the truth. Everything I posted is documented. The truth? Dad's voice rose for the first time. You embarrassed us in front of the entire community. Cost us our standing at church. People look at us differently now. You'll pay for this. Legally, financially. We have a strong case. Mom was shouting now. You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy. I protected myself from fraud, I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. That's all. 7 days. Think carefully about your next move. The line went dead. I sat in silence, the letter still in my hand, fear and fury warring in my chest. I texted Jessica immediately. Need help. Family-threatening lawsuit. Can you look at something? Her response came within the hour. Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring the letter. Saturday morning, Jessica read the cease and desist carefully, her expression shifting from serious to amused. Then she laughed, actually laughed, and I stared at her in confusion. Why are you laughing? This seems serious. Because this is a classic intimidation tactic. Weak case wrapped in scary language. She tapped the letter. Defamation truth is absolute defense. Everything you posted is verifiable fact with documentation. You have the property, deed, bank statements, mortgage records. Their own fake contract proves they plotted fraud. Emotional distress, absurd. You exercised your legal right to sell your own property. Any distress they feel is self-inflicted from unreasonable expectations. Implied contract. Won't hold up. Statute of frauds requires real estate agreements in writing. Plus, you have evidence they were coercing you. Relief washed over me. So they can't actually sue me? Oh, they can sue. Anyone can file a lawsuit, but they'll lose badly. Jessica smiled. Want me to respond? I'll do it pro bono. I hate bullies, especially family bullies. Yes, please. I'm done being scared of them. Good. Give me 48 hours. I'll draft something educational. I read their legal threat 3 times. They thought the law would scare me into submission, make me crawl back and beg forgiveness. But they forgot one thing: I had the truth, the evidence, and a property deed with my name on it. Their lawsuit was a bluff, and I was about to call it. Jessica's response letter arrived at Patterson & Associates on Monday morning via certified mail and email, 4 pages of legal precision that methodically dismantled every claim my family had made. She'd copied me on the email, and I read it 3 times with something close to awe. The letterhead alone carried weight, Jessica's firm well-established and respected in the legal community. The tone was professional, almost courteous, but underneath ran a current of absolute certainty. We represent Emma Carter in response to your cease and desist dated January 24th. After careful review, we find your claims without merit. Then she took them apart piece by piece. Under the defamation claim, she wrote, Truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Our client's statements are supported by property deeds showing sole ownership, mortgage documents in her name only, bank records showing she paid all costs, and documentation of your client's scheme, including a prepared fake contract and practiced signatures. She'd attached exhibits, everything I'd given her, plus the photos Uncle Mike had provided of that damning folder. The emotional distress claim she dismissed as frivolous. Our client exercised her legal right to sell her property. Your client's distress stems from their failed scheme, not our client's lawful actions. For the implied contract claim, she cited the statute of frauds, explained that verbal discussions under duress don't constitute binding contracts, noted that their attempted fraud negated any claim of good faith. The conclusion was devastating in its calm professionalism. Your clients have no legal basis for any claim. Should they proceed with litigation, we will countersue for malicious prosecution and abuse of process, seek attorney fees under applicable statutes, file a criminal complaint regarding attempted fraud based on the forged signature practice sheets, and pursue a restraining order if harassment continues. She ended with advice wrapped in velvet but backed by steel. We strongly advise your clients to drop this matter immediately and cease all contact with our client. We trust you will counsel them appropriately regarding the weakness of their position. Tuesday afternoon, Jessica called me, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. They folded, completely. What happened? Patterson called. Said he'd reviewed everything and advised his clients not to pursue litigation. I asked if he meant at this time or at all. He said at all. Case closed from their end. Just like that? Just like that. He apologized for the inconvenience, which tells me he's embarrassed. He probably took their retainer, started building the case, then realized, once he saw our evidence, that there was nothing there. Relief flooded through me so intensely, I had to sit down. So it's over. The legal threat is over. But document any further harassment. We might still need a restraining order. She paused. You called their bluff and won. How does it feel? Like I can finally breathe. What I learned later through the reliable neighborhood grapevine was that my parents had received their own call from Patterson that afternoon. He'd been direct. No case. Drop it. Everything I posted was provably true. They'd lose, and it would cost them significantly more than they'd already spent. Dad had apparently asked how much they'd just paid him. $5,000 retainer, Patterson had said, but he could only refund $2,500. The consultation and letter work was billable, so they were out $2,500 for a lawsuit that never happened, and worse, their own lawyer had told them they were wrong. Word spread through the community with the speed of wildfire. They'd tried to sue their own daughter and had no legal grounds. It made them look vindictive, desperate, willing to weaponize the legal system to silence truth. Some church members who'd remained neutral now distanced themselves entirely. Going after your own daughter in court crossed a line even for those inclined to give parents the benefit of the doubt. Jenna's meltdown, according to David, who texted me later, was spectacular. So she just wins? She gets away with everything. She'd screamed when they told her the lawsuit was dead. David had tried to be reasonable. She didn't do anything illegal. She sold her own condo. I don't care about legal. It's not fair, that was supposed to be ours. That last line David said had been revealing. She'd never cared about legality or rights or fairness in any objective sense. She'd only cared about getting what she wanted. Their lawyer dropped the case within 48 hours. No lawsuit, no apology. They'd spent thousands on legal fees just to be told they had no grounds. I should have felt victorious, and I did. But that night my sister posted something that made my blood run cold. Sometimes the truth comes out in ways you don't expect. Stay tuned. I was still processing the legal victory when the Facebook message arrived Wednesday afternoon. Karen Williams. The profile showed a woman in her 40s smiling with her family in front of a suburban home. A legitimate account, not a fake profile or troll. You don't know me, but you should know what your sister did to us. I saw your post. There's more to the story. Can we talk? I stared at the message, curiosity warring with caution. What do you mean? Call me. This isn't something to discuss over text. She included a phone number. I called. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. 2 years ago, your sister joined a health supplement MLM. Do you know about this? No, what happened? Her voice cracked slightly. She recruited from our church, from PTA meetings, from the neighborhood moms group. She sold these exclusive supplements, weight loss products, energy boosters, immunity support. Promised they'd change our lives. And they were fake. She took our money, $200 to $500 per person, and sent us cheap supplements she'd bought on Amazon and repackaged. She kept the cash instead of ordering real products through the MLM company. 23 victims. $75,000 over 6 months. My husband and I lost $3,500. Some people lost more. My hand tightened on the phone. She scammed you. She scammed all of us. People who trusted her because we went to the same church, because our kids played together, because we thought she was one of us. While we talked, Karen sent screenshots via email. I pulled them up on my laptop, my stomach turning with each image. Jenna's Facebook posts from 2 years ago, bright and enthusiastic. These supplements changed my life. Message me to order. Before and after photos that looked suspiciously professional, probably stolen from the internet. Promises that seemed too good to be true, because they were. Lose 20 pounds in 30 days, boost immunity naturally. Karen shared a group chat among the victims, their messages growing increasingly concerned. Did anyone else get sick from the supplements? I think these aren't real. The packaging looks off. She blocked me when I asked for a refund. Several people had gotten sick. Rashes, stomach problems. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to raise alarm bells. Some had filed complaints with the MLM company, which had investigated and confirmed that Jenna had never ordered products through their system. She'd been kicked out, banned from the company entirely. When victims started demanding refunds, Jenna had blocked them all on social media and disappeared from public view for months. Your parents knew, Karen said. I have an email from your mother. She forwarded it. 8 months old. Mom's email address. Mom's writing style. I know Jenna made mistakes. Please give her time to make this right. She's struggling. She has children to think about. They've been trying to pay people back quietly, Karen explained. Using their retirement savings, I think. They paid me back $1,000 of my $3,500. Said that's all they could afford. But most people haven't gotten anything. Everything suddenly clicked with horrible, perfect clarity. The condo wasn't about helping Jenna find housing. It was about liquidating my asset to cover her crimes. They'd wanted to transfer ownership through that fake contract, then sell it. Use the $300,000 to pay off all the victims, cover Jenna's other debts. Give her a clean slate. They were going to make me pay for her fraud. We're filing a civil lawsuit next week, Karen said. Several of us together. We can't let this go. She destroyed lives. One woman couldn't afford her daughter's college tuition because of this. Another woman's retirement savings gone because she trusted your sister. I understand. Your parents tried to sweep it under the rug, tried to handle it quietly. But she needs to face consequences. I'm telling you because you deserve to know why they really wanted that condo. And because when we file, it'll be public record. I wanted you to hear it from someone first. After we hung up, I sat staring at the emails, the screenshots, the evidence of systematic fraud committed against people who'd done nothing wrong except trust someone from their community. My sister hadn't just stolen from strangers. She'd stolen from our church community, from mothers trying to support their families, from people who trusted her because they trusted our parents. And my parents had expected me to pay for her crimes by giving up my $300,000 condo. They hadn't been trying to help her find housing. They'd been trying to liquidate my asset to cover her fraud. The question was, did the victims deserve to know I had proof? I spent 2 days wrestling with Karen's information, trying to decide what to do with it. Then Friday evening, my doorbell rang, repeatedly insistent and demanding. I checked the Ring camera and saw my parents standing at my door. They looked like they'd aged a decade in the month since Christmas. Dad had lost weight, his face gaunt and tired. Mom's hair had gone completely gray, the salon visits apparently a casualty of their financial crisis. They wore cheap coats I didn't recognize, probably from Walmart. I debated not answering, but curiosity won. I opened the door with the chain lock still on. "What do you want?" Mom started crying immediately. "Please, just 5 minutes. We need to talk." "We're not here to fight," Dad added, his voice stripped of its usual authority. "Please, can we just talk?" Against my better judgment, I let them in. They sat on my couch in the small apartment I'd moved to after selling the condo, looking around like they'd stumbled into unfamiliar territory. Which they had. They hadn't been in my space in years. The silence stretched for a full minute. Neither of them seemed to know how to start. Mom finally spoke, her voice shaking. "I know you're angry. You have every right to be angry. But your sister, she's in real trouble. Serious trouble." "There are people threatening to sue her," Dad said. "Some talking about pressing criminal charges for fraud." "I know. Karen contacted me." Both their faces went pale. They clearly hadn't expected this. "She told you." Mom's voice came out strangled. "Everything. The MLM scam, the $75,000, the fake supplements that made people sick." Dad went defensive immediately. "She made mistakes, bad mistakes, but she's still your sister." "Those people want their money back," Mom said. "All of it. $75,000. We don't have that kind of money." "We've given her everything we have," Dad added. "Drained our retirement accounts. It's still not enough." Mom's voice rose, taking on an accusatory edge. "If you hadn't sold the condo, we could have helped her. Could have made things right." I stared at her, incredulous. "So your plan was to steal my condo to pay for her fraud?" "Not steal," Dad corrected. "We would have bought it from you. Family discount. For $50,000, a $300,000 condo. You could have bought another place eventually. Started over." "With what money?" "After you took my $300,000 asset and gave me $50,000. Mom leaned forward, her hands clasped like she was praying. "You've always been the strong one, the one who doesn't need us. Your sister needs help. Real help. She has children. They could lose their mother to jail." "We're not getting any younger," Dad said. "We're 68 years old. What if something happens to us? Who'll take care of her then?" Even now, even caught, even confronted with the full scope of their scheme, they still expected me to sacrifice. No apology for the fraud they'd tried to commit against me. No acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just the same old story, fix this for us because you're capable and she's not. "Where were you when I needed help?" I asked. "When I asked for a $5,000 loan for my apartment deposit?" "That was different. You were young. You needed to learn responsibility." And Jenna, at 37 years old, committing fraud against her own church members, doesn't need to learn responsibility. The silence that followed had weight. They had no answer that made sense, no way to spin it, that didn't reveal the fundamental unfairness they'd built their parenting on. "She's not learning responsibility because you keep saving her," I said quietly. "You always have." Mom made one last, desperate attempt. "Please, she's your only sister. You'll regret this. Family is forever. Family is supposed to protect each other, not sacrifice one child to save the other from her own consequences." "So that's it," Dad's voice hardened. "You'll just let her go to jail." "I'm not sending her anywhere. Her choices did that. I'm just not paying to bail her out." I stood up and walked to the door, opening it wide. "I think it's time for you to leave." They sat there, stunned, not moving. "Now, please leave my home." They sat in my living room begging me to fix the mess they'd created. No apology, no acknowledgement of the fraud they'd tried to commit against me, just more demands wrapped in tears. I looked at my mother and saw what I'd feared becoming my whole life, someone who believed love meant endless enabling. I stood up and opened the door. "I think it's time for you to leave." This time I didn't watch them go. I just closed the door. After they left, I sat at my computer staring at a blank document. I didn't trust a phone conversation. They'd interrupt, manipulate, redirect. But an email was permanent, documented, impossible to twist later. I spent 2 hours writing it, every word chosen carefully. This wasn't just communication. It was therapy and evidence closure and boundaries all wrapped into one final statement. Saturday morning at 6 o'clock, I hit send. The recipients, Mom, Dad, Jenna, copied Uncle Mike and Jessica as witnesses. Subject line, final statement, no further discussion. I'm writing this once. I will not repeat myself. I will not debate this. I will not argue. For 30 years, I was the child who didn't matter as much. Every milestone, every need, every achievement was secondary to hers. I accepted it because I thought that's what family meant. That's what love looked like. I was wrong. Family doesn't mean one person sacrifices endlessly, while another takes without gratitude or accountability. Then I laid it all out, a comprehensive timeline of every wound I'd been carrying. Age 16. She received a $25,000 car. I received nothing. You said I needed to earn things. She didn't have to earn hers. Age 22. You paid $40,000 for her wedding, told me to go to the courthouse because weddings aren't important. My marriage was apparently not important. Age 25. You loaned her $15,000 for a failed business venture never repaid. Same year I asked for a $5,000 apartment deposit loan and was refused. You said I needed to stand on my own feet. Age 32. I bought a condo with my money after 8 years of work. You said good job, then immediately asked if she could stay there. My achievement immediately became her opportunity. Age 35. You plotted to steal that condo via forged contract to pay for her fraud crimes. I have the documents. I have the practiced signatures. I continued. Every single time I was expected to be understanding, strong, accommodating, mature. But when I finally said no, when I finally protected myself, I became selfish, became cruel, heartless. The double standard is exhausting. The unfairness is exhausting. You are exhausting. The final section I titled, Moving Forward, My Boundaries. These are not requests. These are not negotiable. These are requirements if you want any contact with me. 1, I will not give money to Jenna or enable her behavior in any way. 2, I will not lie to protect her from consequences of her choices. 3, I will not attend family gatherings where I'm expected to apologize or make peace on your terms. 4, if you contact me to guilt manipulate or demand I help her, I will block you immediately. 5, if you send others to guilt me on your behalf, I will block them too. These aren't punishments. These aren't revenge. They're self-preservation. I ended with words I'd needed to say for 3 decades. I hope someday you understand that you didn't lose a daughter because she was selfish. You lost her because you taught her she only mattered when she gave you what you wanted. You taught her that her accomplishments were family resources to redistribute. You taught her that boundaries were betrayal. I deserved better. I deserved parents who were proud of me without immediately thinking of how my success could benefit her. I'm choosing better now, even if that means choosing it alone. Do not contact me unless you're ready to take real accountability. Not apologize for my feelings. Take accountability for your actions. Until then, goodbye. I hit send at 6:47. The read receipts showed they opened it within minutes. All 3 of them probably sitting together reading my words and deciding how to respond. No response came. No calls. No texts. Just silence. I turned off my phone and went for a long walk, the morning air cold and clean in my lungs. I sent the email at 6:47 in the morning. Read receipts showed they opened it within minutes. No response came. No calls. No texts. Just silence. And for the first time in my life, that silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like freedom. But my sister's desperation was about to reach a breaking point, and her next move would be captured on camera for the world to see. I turned my phone back on Sunday afternoon and found 17 text messages from church members I barely knew. The service that morning had apparently become a battlefield, and I hadn't even been there. Pastor Michael had addressed it indirectly in his sermon, several people reported. Families face trials. We must remember, judge not lest ye be judged. Only God knows what's in someone's heart. We should be slow to condemn. The words were diplomatic, careful, designed to calm tensions without taking sides. They'd done the opposite. Coffee hour afterward had been a disaster. The church community, the place my parents had considered their social stronghold for 30 years, had fractured into visible factions. The old guard, mostly my parents' generation, and older believed families should forgive and forget no matter what. She's being stubborn and prideful, one woman had told my friend Sarah loud enough for half the room to hear. This is what happens when children forget to honor their parents. The middle generation people my age who understood mortgages and property values and what 8 years of savings actually meant saw it differently. They literally tried to steal her house, Sarah had said back. I'd protect my property too. The conversation had grown heated enough that Pastor Michael had to intervene. The young adults in their 20s and 30s had been even more direct. This is textbook toxic family dynamics, one of them had posted in the church's private Facebook group. Good for her for setting boundaries. More people should. My parents' close friends deliberately avoided anyone who'd spoken in my defense. People picked sides in the coffee line in the parking lot, in whispered conversations by the bulletin board. Some families had simply stopped attending altogether rather than navigate the tension. Sarah texted me that church leadership was genuinely concerned about losing members over what they were calling the Condo situation, as if reducing 30 years of favoritism and attempted fraud to a property dispute somehow made it more manageable. By Monday evening, the local Facebook group, Downtown Metro Neighbors, had become a war zone. Someone had posted asking if anyone else was following the family drama, and 300 comments appeared within 6 hours. She's heartless. It's just a condo. You can't put a price on family. It's a $300,000 asset she worked 8 years for. They wanted to steal it with a fake contract. But think of the children. Her sister has kids who needed a home. The sister scammed people in an MLM scheme. She's a fraud. Both sides are wrong. They should just forgive each other and move on. Why should she forgive people who literally won't even apologize? Family is family. You help no matter what. That's enabling, not helping. The argument spiraled, people who'd never met me or my family weighing in with absolute certainty about who was right and who was wrong. A local blogger picked up the story, anonymizing the details, but poorly enough that everyone local knew exactly who it was about. Downtown condo sale, tears family apart, who's really wrong? The article included interviews with neighbors who'd filmed the moving day confrontation with Rachel. I've never seen anything like it, one neighbor was quoted saying. The woman who answered the door was so calm while the other one was screaming. It was surreal. The comments section exploded. 2,000 comments within 48 hours, people from other cities and even other states weighing in. The local news station picked it up as a human interest piece, calling it a cautionary tale about family and money and the importance of clear communication. I became a reluctant local celebrity overnight. I couldn't go to Trader Joe's without being recognized. Some people approached with support, sharing their own stories of toxic family dynamics, thanking me for speaking out. Others glared from across the produce section, whispering loudly enough for me to hear. One woman confronted me directly in the cereal aisle. You should be ashamed. Family is everything. You broke your parents' hearts. I was too exhausted to engage. You don't know the full story. I know enough. You're selfish and cold. I walked away, abandoning my cart, not because I was ashamed, but because I simply couldn't argue with every stranger who'd formed an opinion based on fragments of truth and speculation. Cashiers recognized me. "Oh, you're the Condo lady." Some said it with admiration, others with barely disguised judgment. I learned to smile neutrally and keep moving. I joined an online support group called Estranged Adult Children and found thousands of people dealing with similar dynamics. Parents who believed their children's successes were family resources to redistribute. Siblings who'd been enabled into helplessness. People who'd set boundaries and been labeled selfish for it. The validation was helpful, but it didn't make the local scrutiny less exhausting. I seriously considered moving to a new city, starting fresh somewhere. Nobody knew my name or my story. Kate talked me out of it. "Don't let them chase you out of your own town. You didn't do anything wrong." But doing nothing wrong didn't protect me from judgment. Half the town thought I was cruel. Half thought I was brave. I was tired of being either. I just wanted peace, wanted to grocery shop and go to coffee shops and live my life without being a cautionary tale or an inspiration or a villain. I'd become a local pariah and a local hero at the same time. Half the town thought I was cruel. Half thought I was brave. I was tired of being either. I just wanted peace. But peace wasn't coming because that night my sister was about to make the most desperate, destructive choice of her life. And this time she'd do it on camera. I spent the next few days trying to return to normal life, but normal proved impossible when Jenna's car kept appearing outside my apartment building, like a ghost that refused to be exorcised. Monday morning, I noticed it across the street while making coffee. Dark blue Honda Civic. The same one my parents had bought her years ago, engine off, just sitting there in a metered parking spot. At first, I thought it was coincidence. The city was full of blue Hondas. But when I moved closer to the window, I saw her silhouette in the driver's seat, phone glowing in her hands. She looked up, saw me watching, and drove away quickly. Maybe I was being paranoid. Tuesday morning at 8, the car was back. I checked again at 10. Still there. Noon came and I looked out to find her still parked in the same spot, and my paranoia crystallized into certainty. This wasn't coincidence. This was surveillance. I went downstairs and walked across the street, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. I knocked on her window. She jumped, startled, then rolled it down slowly. "What are you doing here?" She looked up from her phone, and I was struck by how terrible she looked. Face pale and gaunt, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Just happened to be in the neighborhood. Free country." "This is my neighborhood, Jenna. You live 40 minutes away in the suburbs." She held my gaze for a moment, something flickering in her eyes that I couldn't quite read. Defiance. Desperation. Then she started the car without another word and drove off, but slowly, deliberately, like she wanted me to know she wasn't intimidated. Wednesday, she was back. This time she sat there for over an hour, not even pretending to be doing anything else. Just watching my building. I stood at my window watching her watch me, and the surreality of it made me feel like I was losing my grip on reality. My own sister stalking me in broad daylight. I called the non-emergency police line, my hands shaking as I explained the situation to the dispatcher. "My sister has been parking outside my building for 3 days. She just sits there. I feel unsafe." The officer who responded 20 minutes later was polite and professional. He talked to Jenna for several minutes while I watched from my window. When he came to my door, his message was frustrating but clear. "She says she's waiting for a friend who lives in the building. She's on a public street, ma'am. Unless she threatens you directly or violates a restraining order, there's not much we can do." So she can just sit there watching my apartment all day. If she's on public property and not making threats, yes, ma'am, I'd recommend documenting everything and filing for a restraining order if the behavior continues. The social media stalking started that same week. New accounts with generic names and no profile pictures began appearing in my notifications. Comments on posts I'd made 3, 4, 5 years ago, back when my life was simpler and my family seemed normal. "You'll get what's coming to you. Karma doesn't forget. Enjoy your stolen peace while it lasts." I blocked them immediately. New ones appeared within hours, sometimes minutes. The messages were similar enough that I knew they all came from the same source, but different enough that she was putting thought into each one, spending time crafting these little poison darts. Then my friends started reporting the direct messages. "Hey, your sister just messaged me asking where you work," Kate texted. "Didn't give her any info but thought you should know." Another friend. "She's asking about your routine, when you're usually home. It's really weird." Sarah called me directly. "She asked me who you're dating and if you live alone. I told her to leave you alone and blocked her. Emma, this is getting scary." The text messages from Jenna's own phone escalated in both frequency and instability. 2 a.m. "You ruined my life and you don't even care, do you?" And 3 minutes later, before I could have possibly responded even if I'd wanted to, "I can't sleep. The kids cry every night. This is your fault." Then at 4:17, my phone buzzing on the nightstand and pulling me from fitful sleep. "My marriage is falling apart because of you." By 6:45, as I was trying to get ready for work, "I hope you're happy. I hope it was worth it. I hope you can live with yourself." This pattern continued for days, messages at all hours cycling rapidly between rage and victim mentality, between threats and self-pity. The emotional whiplash was exhausting even to witness secondhand. The voicemails were worse. I made myself listen to them knowing I needed documentation, and each one chilled me more than the last. Long, rambling monologues that grew increasingly unhinged. "You think you won, but you didn't. Everyone knows what you did. God sees everything. You'll pay for this. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you'll pay. I gave you so many chances to make this right, so many opportunities to be the sister you should have been. You chose war. Fine. War it is." One voicemail contained no words at all, just 3 straight minutes of sobbing. Gut-wrenching, desperate crying that sounded like it came from somewhere deep and fundamentally broken. I listened to the whole thing, disturbed by how much pain was in those sounds, but also disturbed by my own lack of sympathy. I felt nothing but wariness. Thursday morning, David sent me a text. "I'm sorry about Jenna. I can't control her anymore. She's completely obsessed with you in this situation. Please be careful." I screenshot everything: the texts, the voicemails, the fake social media accounts, David's warning, and sent it all to Jessica. "Is this harassment? Should I be worried?" Her response came within the hour. "Yes, this absolutely constitutes harassment. Start restraining order paperwork immediately. Document everything with dates and times. Save all messages. If she shows up at your apartment again, call the police every single time." That afternoon, my phone rang with my parents' number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Your sister is not doing well." Mom's voice sounded strained, older somehow. "I'm genuinely worried about her mental state." "What do you mean?" "She's not sleeping, barely eating. She just sits in her room staring at her phone, scrolling through your Facebook page for hours. Sometimes she cries. Sometimes she just stares. It's not healthy. She needs professional help, Mom. Therapy, probably medication. Not my condo. Can't you just talk to her? Help her move past this. You're her sister. I'm not responsible for her mental health, especially not after everything she's done. Everything you've all done." The line went quiet for a moment. Then Mom said, "I don't know what else to do," and hung up. Uncle Mike texted me that evening. "Your mom called me, said Jenna is spiraling hard, talking about making things right and getting justice. She used the phrase taking matters into her own hands. Be aware. Be careful." I took his warning seriously. I called my landlord and had new locks installed, adding a heavy deadbolt that made me feel slightly safer. I notified building security about Jenna, providing them with her photo and license plate number. I started parking in different spots each day, sometimes 2 blocks away, sometimes in the garage across the street. I varied my schedule, leaving for work at different times, coming home via different routes. My friends thought I was overreacting. "She's just venting," one said. "She's not actually dangerous. She's a mom with 2 kids." But I'd learned to trust my instincts, and my instincts were screaming that something was building. Some pressure that had to break one way or another. I could feel it in the increasing frequency of her drive-bys, in the escalating desperation of her messages, in the way she'd stopped even trying to hide what she was doing. Friday night, she posted something on Facebook that made every alarm bell in my head ring at once. Sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. The truth will come out. Stay tuned. The texts came faster, the drive-bys more frequent. My sister was unraveling, and everyone could see it except my parents, who kept insisting I was the problem. I should have seen the warning signs more clearly. I should have known that desperation and obsession make a dangerous combination. Because what she did next wouldn't just cross a line, it would be broadcast live to thousands. I was at work Tuesday afternoon when Rachel called, her voice tight with an urgency that made my pulse spike immediately. "Your sister is here, at my building. She's doing a Facebook Live right now and saying she's going to confront me. I thought you should know." My stomach dropped like I'd been pushed off a cliff. What? When did this start? About 10 minutes ago. She posted something at 2 saying she was going to get answers today, and now she's outside my building broadcasting live. I can see her from my window pacing back and forth. "Call the police, right now. Don't go down there, Rachel, please." "I'm already calling. I just wanted you to know what's happening." The line went dead. I pulled up Facebook on my phone with hands that had started shaking so badly I almost dropped it. I found Jenna's profile, and there it was at the top of her page, a red, live indicator pulsing next to her name like a warning light. 500 viewers already and climbing. I clicked it, my heart hammering. Jenna's face filled my screen, and I was struck by how calculated it all looked. Her face was tear-stained eyes, red and puffy, but her makeup was carefully applied foundation, smooth mascara, freshly done. She'd prepared for this performance, planned it down to the details. "I'm here at what should be our family home," she said, her voice wavering with what sounded like practiced emotion. "My sister sold it out of pure spite to my husband's ex-wife, just to humiliate us, to hurt us when we were already down." The view count climbed as I watched. 800, 1,000, 1,500. The local drama was drawing an immediate audience, people drawn to conflict like spectators at an accident. "Today, I'm getting our belongings that she won't return," Jenna continued, and I felt anger flash through me because it was a complete, blatant lie. She'd never moved in. She'd never had belongings there. She was fabricating reality in real time for thousands of witnesses. "I'm tired of being silent, tired of being the victim. Today, I take back what's mine." The camera view swayed as she started walking toward the building entrance, and I could see her hand shaking, the image trembling. Comments flooded the screen faster than I could read them, a chaotic scroll of reactions. "You go, girl," mixed with "this seems unhinged" and "is this legal?" Someone wrote, "pretty sure this is trespassing." Another comment, "call the police right now." 2,000 viewers now. Jenna pressed the buzzer for Unit 3B, and I watched helplessly from miles away, unable to do anything but witness what was about to unfold. My breath caught in my throat as I waited. The door opened. Rachel appeared on camera dressed casually in dark jeans and a cream sweater, holding a coffee mug like she'd just been enjoying a peaceful Tuesday afternoon in her home. Her expression was completely calm, almost curious. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for my things. Let me in." Jenna's voice had already started rising, the camera still pointed steadily at Rachel's face. "You don't have anything here," Rachel said, her voice level and professional. "You never moved in. You need to leave." "That's my home. My sister stole it and gave it to you." The pitch of Jenna's voice climbed higher with each word. "I bought it legally. I have the deed right here if you'd like to see it. You're trespassing on my property. I'm asking you politely to leave." Jenna tried to push past Rachel into the building entrance. I watched horrified as Rachel physically blocked the doorway, her body language shifting from polite to protective. She pulled out her phone with one hand while keeping the other on the doorframe. "I'm calling the police right now." Then it happened, and I watched it unfold in real time with 2,500 people. Jenna shoved Rachel hard, both hands against her shoulders in a violent push. Rachel stumbled backward, her coffee mug falling to the ground and shattering, but she caught herself on the doorframe before she could fall completely. "You just assaulted me," Rachel said, and her voice was sharp now, cutting through the chaos. "On camera, with 2,000 witnesses watching live." Jenna was screaming, fully unhinged now, any pretense of being the wronged party evaporating in her rage. "I don't care! This is my house, you stole it from me!" I could hear Rachel's voice clearly as she spoke into her phone. "Yes, I need police at 428 Market Street immediately. A woman is trespassing on my property and just physically assaulted me. It's being live-streamed on Facebook right now. There are thousands of witnesses." The dispatcher's voice came through faintly. "Officers are on the way. Are you safe?" "Yes, I'm in the doorway. She's outside, but getting increasingly aggressive." Jenna seemed to suddenly realize that the phone was still broadcasting everything. She lunged for it, tried to grab it from wherever she'd propped it against the building, and it fell to the ground with a clatter. The camera angle went sideways, capturing mostly pavement and the edge of the building, but the audio remained crystal clear. "Turn it off! Stop filming!" Jenna's voice was panicked now, desperate, but she couldn't figure out how to end the live stream in her panic. I could hear her fumbling with the phone, cursing. The viewer count hit 3,000, then 3,500. While they waited for police to arrive, the confrontation escalated into something genuinely painful to watch. Jenna screamed through the doorway about her ruined life, how Rachel had destroyed everything, how this was all so unfair. Rachel's responses were calm, measured, and absolutely cutting. "I didn't take your home. Your sister sold her home that she bought with her own money. And I didn't take David. You pursued a married man and destroyed 2 marriages. I was the one wronged 5 years ago, remember? He loved me. He chose me over you. And yet here you are, desperate and broke and screaming at me on someone else's property while I own a condo and have a loving husband and a successful business. How did that work out for you?" The comment section exploded. 5,000 viewers now, the number still climbing as people shared the link. "She's completely unhinged. This is so sad to watch. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Someone needs to get this woman mental help immediately." The police arrived in under 3 minutes, which meant they'd treated it as a priority call. I watched 2 officers approach, their body language alert and professional. One of them addressed Jenna. "Ma'am, I need you to calm down and step back. She won't let me into my house. You need to arrest her. She's the criminal here." "Who owns this property?" the officer asked, his voice neutral. Rachel showed them her property deed on her phone, still completely composed. "I do. I bought it legally 3 weeks ago. Here's the deed with my name on it. She's trespassing and just assaulted me on camera. The phone on the ground is still recording. There are 5,000 people who just watched her commit assault." The officer turned to Jenna and his voice became firmer. "Ma'am, this isn't your property. You need to leave immediately." "No, I'm not leaving. This should be mine. My sister promised me." "Ma'am, you're under arrest for criminal trespassing and assault." Jenna tried to run. The officer caught her arm easily, professionally. She screamed like she was being murdered. "Don't touch me! Help! Someone help me!" The handcuffs clicked into place with a sound that carried clearly through the phone's microphone. 12,000 people were watching now. Jenna sobbed and screamed as they walked her to the patrol car. "This isn't fair. She stole from me. My sister set me up. This is all her fault." Her face was red and distorted with rage and desperation. Nothing left of the carefully made-up victim who'd started the broadcast. The sideways camera captured her being placed in the back of the police car, still screaming, still insisting she was the victim. Rachel walked over calmly and picked up the phone from the ground. She looked directly into the camera, and I saw her take a breath before speaking. "For the record, I legally purchased this property 3 weeks ago with my own money. I have never met this woman before today. Everything she said was a lie." The screen went black. The live stream had ended, but the video had automatically saved to Facebook. Within 30 minutes, I watched the view count climb to 50,000. People were sharing it everywhere, adding their own commentary, dissecting every moment frame by frame. Local news sites picked it up. Reddit threads appeared. Twitter was talking about it. By morning, the view count would hit 200,000 across multiple platforms. By the time the police drove away, her Facebook Live had 12,000 viewers. By morning, it would have 200,000 views across multiple platforms. She'd wanted to expose me as the villain. Instead, she'd exposed herself, her lies, her violence, her complete detachment from reality. The video couldn't be deleted. The internet never forgets. And this time she'd destroyed herself on camera with no one to blame but her own desperation. The video spread like wildfire across every platform within hours. I watched it happen in real time from my desk at work, unable to focus on anything else as the view counts climbed exponentially. Facebook to Twitter to Reddit's public freakout forum to TikTok, each platform adding its own commentary, its own angle, its own viral spin on my sister's complete public meltdown. People were dissecting every moment, creating reaction videos, adding captions and commentary. It was simultaneously vindicating and horrifying to watch. By the 6 o'clock evening, news local stations had picked it up as their lead human interest story. I watched the broadcast on my phone during my break, the anchor's voice professional and carefully neutral. Woman arrested after Facebook Live meltdown over condo dispute. The chyron at the bottom of the screen reinforced the headline as footage from the live stream played with strategic blurring over faces. The report included context pulled from public records, which meant reporters had done their homework. The dispute stems from a family conflict over a downtown condo. Court records show the woman's sister legally sold the property 3 weeks ago, but the arrested woman believed she had claim to it. Then came the detail that made my breath catch. The arrested woman is also facing a separate civil lawsuit from victims of an alleged MLM fraud scheme totaling $75,000. Everything was public now. Everything was connected and documented and searchable. The condo, the fraud, the arrest, the family drama, all woven together into a narrative my sister couldn't escape or rewrite no matter how many fake Facebook accounts she created. She was formally charged with 3 counts: criminal trespassing, assault, and battery and disorderly conduct. Bail was set at $5,000, which, according to Uncle Mike, who stayed in touch to keep me informed, my parents had to scramble desperately to come up with. They were nearly broke after months of paying off MLM victims and funding their failed legal threats against me. Dad had to borrow $2,000 from his other brother, the one who lived in Ohio, and rarely spoke to the family at 10% interest. The humiliation of that must have been excruciating for a man who'd spent decades preaching about financial responsibility and living within your means. David was mortified beyond any words he could articulate, Uncle Mike told me during one of our coffee meetings. The video showed his wife literally screaming, "You took my husband," at his ex-wife while trying to physically force her way into a building she had no legal right to enter. His co-workers at the bank had seen it because everyone had seen it. His boss had seen it. The bank's board had seen it. Random strangers in grocery stores had seen it. Wednesday morning, less than 24 hours after the arrest, David's boss called him into his office. The conversation was brief and professional and devastating. "David, this is embarrassing for the bank's reputation. The video has your wife mentioning your name multiple times. Clients are asking questions. I think you should take a leave of absence. Paid, of course, just until this blows over and the media attention dies down." The message was crystal clear. Even wrapped in corporate politeness, they wanted him gone, but couldn't legally fire him without cause. David was realizing, perhaps far too late, that he'd left a stable marriage with Rachel for an escalating chaos that showed no signs of stopping. His kids were suffering 2 innocent casualties of their mother's choices. Uncle Mike heard from a mutual friend whose daughter attended the same school as Mason and Lily. The kids were being teased mercilessly. "Your mom's the crazy condo lady." Children could be cruel without even understanding the full context, just parroting what they'd heard their parents discussing at dinner tables across town. Thursday afternoon, my phone lit up with a text from Karen, the MLM victim who'd first contacted me weeks ago. "We're filing today. 15 of us pooled resources and hired an attorney. She's proven through that video that she has no boundaries, no accountability, no stability. We need to act now before she has a chance to hide assets or declare bankruptcy or disappear." By evening, the news had picked up the second story. Viral video woman also accused of $75K MLM fraud. The joint civil lawsuit sought $75,000 in stolen funds plus punitive damages that could double or triple that amount, plus attorney fees. The combination of the viral arrest video and the fraud lawsuit created a narrative so damning that even my sister's most loyal defenders fell silent. The church community, many of whom genuinely hadn't known the full scope of the MLM scheme, reacted with shock and betrayal. These were people who'd trusted my parents as pillars of the congregation, who'd assumed their family was held to higher standards. The victims went public with their stories, no longer willing to stay quiet to protect the family's reputation. Karen spoke to a local news reporter positioned right in front of the church building, the steeple visible in the background. She looked me in the eye at a church potluck and promised these supplements would change my life. She showed me before and after photos. She stole $3,500 from me over 6 months. I trusted her because we went to church together because I thought that meant something. Another victim, a single mom who looked exhausted just recounting it, her voice shaking with suppressed anger. "That $2,000 was supposed to be my daughter's summer camp fund. It took me a year to save it. Gone because I believed someone from my church community, someone I thought I could trust." An older woman, probably in her 70s, spoke with tears running down her face. "We trusted her because we trusted her parents. They've been pillars of this church for 30 years. We thought that meant their daughter had integrity too. We were wrong." Public sympathy for Jenna evaporated overnight like water on hot pavement. The comment sections that had been divided and argumentative now unified in condemnation. "Oh, she scammed elderly church members out of their retirement money and wants sympathy because she couldn't steal her sister's condo." Absolutely not. She committed fraud, got caught, faced consequences, and is mad. Her sister wouldn't help her escape those consequences. The entitlement is unbelievable. Friday afternoon, my parents faced the church leadership in what must have been one of the most humiliating meetings of their lives. Pastor Michael and 3 elders met with them in his office. The conversation was reported to me later by someone who'd been in the adjacent room and overheard most of it through the thin walls. Pastor Michael's voice had been gentle but absolutely firm. "Given the circumstances, the media attention this is bringing to our congregation, and the ongoing legal issues, we think it's best if you step back from all volunteer positions for the foreseeable future." "For how long?" Mom had asked, and the person who overheard said her voice sounded small and broken. "Indefinitely. Until this situation is completely resolved. We're losing members over this conflict. Families are choosing to attend other churches to avoid the drama." They were being expelled essentially, though no one would use that word officially. Suspended until the scandal died down, which based on internet permanence, might be never. The social consequences cascaded quickly after that. Mom's Bible study group stopped meeting at her house, women making polite excuses about scheduling conflicts and other commitments. Dad's Friday night poker group simply stopped inviting him, stopped responding to his texts altogether. Neighbors actively avoided them crossing the street, rather than having to make awkward small talk about the situation everyone had seen on the news. Uncle Mike helped me piece together the complete financial devastation, and the numbers were staggering. They'd already spent over $30,000 from their retirement savings trying to pay back MLM victims, though they'd only managed to actually return about $15,000 total, because new victims kept coming forward. The failed legal threat against me through Patterson and Associates had cost them $2,500 for absolutely nothing. Jenna's bail was $5,000. Her criminal defense attorney required a $10,000 retainer as a minimum because public defenders wouldn't touch an assault case with crystal clear video evidence of the crime. The civil lawsuit defense would require another $15,000 at minimum, probably more. Over $60,000 spent or committed with more expenses inevitably coming. Dad, at 68 years old, had to return to work after 3 years of retirement. He got a job at the local hardware store for $15 an hour, 25 hours a week. Uncle Mike said that former coworkers from his professional career had come into the store and seen him wearing the red employee vest, helping customers find the right size screws. The humiliation had been visible on his face. Mom, at 67, picked up shifts at the grocery store, bagging groceries and organizing carts for $14 an hour. The same women who'd listened to her brag for years about their comfortable retirement now saw her in a store uniform scanning their produce and asking if they wanted paper or plastic. Their house payment was late for the first time in 30 years of ownership. They'd already called a realtor. "We need to list the house as soon as possible. We can't afford the mortgage anymore." Within 2 weeks of that Facebook Live video, their entire carefully constructed life had collapsed like a house of cards. Church membership suspended indefinitely. Retirement savings depleted and still owing money. House going on the market. And the community that had once admired them as successful, stable pillars now whispered, "That's the family from the video," when they walked by. They'd gambled everything on protecting my sister and lost it all. But the consequences were far from over. Because when David saw that video and really processed what his life had become, he made a decision that would destroy my sister's last remaining shred of stability. The week after the arrest, David served Jenna with divorce papers. Uncle Mike called me the day it happened, his voice heavy with something between sympathy and vindication. "He did it, finally. Walked into their temporary housing at your parents' place and handed her the papers in front of everyone." I could picture the scene. Jenna's face as she opened the envelope, the disbelief turning to rage. According to Uncle Mike, who'd heard it from a neighbor who'd heard the screaming through the walls, her first words were, "After everything I did for you, I went to jail for trying to get us a home." David's response, finally honest, after years of enabling, had been devastating. "You didn't go to jail for me. You went to jail because you assaulted someone on camera while trespassing on property that was never ours." "You embarrassed me publicly," he'd continued, his voice rising with each accusation. "My boss saw that video. Every single person I work with saw it. My colleagues, my kids' teachers, my ex-wife watched you scream at her about stealing me when you were the one who pursued a married man. You're obsessed with your sister. You've been stalking her for weeks, sending threatening messages, creating fake social media accounts. It's not healthy. It's not normal. And I can't do this anymore." Jenna had begged, according to the neighbor's account. "I did this for our family. That condo was supposed to save us." David's response had been exhausted, depleted of any remaining sympathy. "That was never our condo. It was your delusion. I told you 100 times to let it go. You've been obsessed for months. You drove by her apartment. You stalked her online. I can't let my kids grow up thinking this behavior is normal or acceptable." The divorce filing included a request for primary physical custody, with only supervised visitation for Jenna. The language cited unstable behavior, obsessive tendencies, violent outburst captured on video, and witnessed by thousands arrest record ongoing harassment of a family member and concerning mental health deterioration. David was building a case that would almost certainly succeed. Jenna's world crumbled completely in the span of a week. Losing her husband, possibly losing her children, facing criminal charges with video evidence that made defense nearly impossible, facing a civil lawsuit for $75,000 she didn't have. And in the ultimate irony, having to move back in with our parents because she had nowhere else to go. The condo had been supposed to prevent exactly this scenario. David got a small apartment across town, took Mason and Lily with him, and filed for an emergency custody hearing scheduled for early March. Meanwhile, my parents' house went on the market February 25th. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, nice suburban neighborhood where they'd lived for 30 years. Listed at $425,000. They told the realtor they were downsizing for retirement, but Uncle Mike knew the truth and shared it with me over coffee. financial catastrophe. They needed money to cover Jenna's criminal defense attorney to settle the civil lawsuit before it went to trial to pay back more MLM victims, in hopes of reducing the judgment against her, and to support Jenna and the grandkids, since David had cut off all financial support. Both of them were working minimum wage jobs that barely covered groceries, let alone a $2,400 monthly mortgage payment. The house was in good condition, well maintained in a desirable neighborhood. It sold in 3 weeks for $420,000. After paying off the remaining mortgage of $140,000 and covering closing costs, they netted $270,000. Uncle Mike overheard Dad say to Mom as they signed the final papers, "This was supposed to be our retirement fund. We were supposed to travel, maybe buy an RV." Mom had been crying. "We had to, for Jenna, for the grandkids. What choice did we have?" The money disappeared almost immediately, allocated before it even hit their bank account. $45,000 to MLM victims as settlement payments to avoid going to trial. $15,000 to Jenna's attorneys for both the criminal case and the divorce proceedings. $10,000 set aside as an emergency fund for Jenna and the kids. That left $200,000 for my parents to live on for the rest of their lives, which at their ages and with no other income could be 20 or 30 years. They could only afford a small 2-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of town. $1,200 a month rent, which was a significant downgrade from the spacious house they'd owned outright. March 1st, all 5 of them moved into 850 square feet. Uncle Mike helped with the move and described the scene to me later with something like horrified fascination. Parent, sister, and 2 traumatized children crammed into a space smaller than my old condo. Jenna and the kids shared 1-bedroom bunk beds for Mason and Lily Jenna sleeping on an air mattress on the floor between the beds. My parents took the 2nd bedroom, 1 bathroom for 5 people, a living room barely big enough for a couch and television, a kitchen where 2 people couldn't pass each other without turning sideways. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, Uncle Mike said. They'd plotted to take my 1,200 square foot condo, and now they were living in 850 square feet with twice as many people. The living situation became tense immediately. The kids cried, frequently traumatized by the divorce, by moving, by having seen their mother arrested on a video their classmates had watched and mocked them for. Jenna was depressed to the point of barely functioning on anxiety medication, not looking for work, just sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone for hours. My parents were exhausted from working retail jobs. They'd thought they'd never have to work again from supporting an adult daughter who showed no signs of improving from living in quarters too cramped for their aging bodies and fraying nerves. All 4 adults snapped at each other constantly. The walls were thin and neighbors complained about the noise. The landlord sent a warning letter after the first week. "Keep it down or you're out." Mason asked his grandmother one day, "Why don't we live in a house anymore?" Jenna's answer, loud enough for the neighbor to hear through the wall, "Because your aunt is selfish and stole everything from us." But Dad's quiet response, barely audible, was different. "No, it's ours. We made every wrong choice." Uncle Mike told me all of this over coffee one Saturday morning, watching my face carefully to gauge my reaction. "They wanted your $300,000 condo to house Jenna's family comfortably," he said. "They lost their $425,000 house in the process. Now they're living in an apartment smaller than the condo they tried to steal from you. They traded a comfortable retirement home for poverty line living." I didn't feel joy hearing it. I didn't feel satisfaction or vindication or any of the emotions I might have expected. I just felt sad. Sad at the waste of it all. Sad at what pride and favoritism and enabling had cost them. Sad that they'd had everything and thrown it away because they couldn't let me have something that was mine. "They could have just let you be," Uncle Mike said, echoing my thoughts. "They'd still have their house, their retirement, their dignity. All they had to do was nothing." "But then they couldn't control everything," I said. "They'd plotted to take my $300,000 condo and keep their comfortable suburban life. Instead, they lost their $425,000 house and ended up in a cramped apartment with paper-thin walls and screaming grandchildren. 4 adults and 2 kids in 850 square feet. Karma doesn't do discounts. It charges interest. And their bill had come due in full. 3 months had passed since I had last heard a word from them. February had been the month I finally drew a line in the sand when I sent that boundary email telling my parents I would not respond to any more manipulation or pressure. Since then, there had been silence, and for a while that silence felt like oxygen, like my lungs were finally allowed to expand. Then one ordinary afternoon in early May, I opened my inbox, and there it was, a subject line that stopped me cold. Please. We need to talk. The sender was my mother. My first instinct was to delete it unread to starve the old reflex that had trained me to flinch and then comply. But my hand froze on the mouse and I clicked instead. The words were not long, but they were heavy. I know we've made terrible mistakes. I know you're hurt and angry. But you're still our daughter. We're still your parents. Can we meet just coffee? Just talk. Please. We're begging you. I read the lines once, then again, and then sat staring at the screen until the edges of the words blurred. There was a time I would have leapt to answer, desperate for reconciliation, desperate to be the one who restored peace. But that version of me had been broken down and discarded in the wreckage of their betrayal. Now all that was left was the question, did I want to see them again, and if so, why? I debated internally for a long time, scrolling up and down the email, hearing old voices in my head. Jessica, my lawyer had warned me in February. You don't owe them anything. Boundaries only work if you hold them. Uncle Mike, gruff but kind, had said, sometimes closure matters. If you do it, make it on your terms. Public place, strict limit. And my therapist, the one I had finally started seeing after months of spiraling, had asked me the most important question of all. What do you need? Not what they need. Not what they want. What serves your healing? Those words rang louder than the email itself. I sat there for an hour wrestling, because the truth was that something inside me wanted a final conversation. Not reconciliation, not repair, but a proper goodbye. I wanted to look them in the eye and say the things that had burned holes in my chest for years. So I replied. My fingers trembled, but my words were steady. 1 hour. Public place. Coffee shop on Elm Street. Saturday, 10 a.m. No sister. No guilt trips. No manipulation. This is a final conversation, not a negotiation. I hit send before I could second guess. Their reply came back within minutes, a speed that reeked of desperation. Yes. Thank you. Saturday, 10 a.m. That swiftness almost unnerved me more than silence. They wanted it badly, but I reminded myself this meeting was for me, not for them. When Saturday arrived, I felt the weight of it pressing into my chest before I even opened my eyes. The air was warm for early May, the sun just beginning to tilt toward summer. I dressed simply but deliberately, choosing a calm gray sweater and jeans, something that made me feel grounded. I drove across town with my heart pounding against the steering wheel, every red light giving me too much time to reconsider. But I kept going until I reached the small coffee shop on Elm Street. I arrived 15 minutes early deliberately, so choosing a seat in the back corner where my view of the door was unobstructed and the exit was only a step away. It was a strategic choice, but also a psychological one. I wanted to remind myself that I had options, that I was in control. At exactly 10 o'clock, they walked in. For a moment, I did not recognize them. My father, once broad-shouldered and brisk in his movements, looked deflated, smaller in his faded jeans, and a polo with the logo of a hardware store stitched above the pocket. His eyes carried dark hollows beneath them, the mark of sleepless nights or endless shifts. My mother's hair, once dyed meticulously every few weeks, was completely gray now, wiry at the edges, her cheap winter coat still clinging to her shoulders, though the season had already turned. Her hands shook when she ordered coffee. They looked 10 years older than when I had last seen them in December. The sight stirred something complicated in me, a pang of pity laced with the hard crust of anger. They sat down across from me, and for a full minute none of us spoke. The silence was not comfortable, but heavy, oppressive, filled with things unsaid. I broke it first, my voice measured. "You have 1 hour. I'm listening." My mother's tears began before she finished her first sentence. "We're so sorry. We made terrible, terrible mistakes." My father cleared his throat, his voice gravelly. "We thought we were helping family, doing the right thing. We were wrong about everything." I stared at them, then spoke with the steadiness that only comes after months of practice. "You weren't wrong about everything. You were wrong about trying to steal from me. You weren't wrong because of how you did it. You were wrong because it wasn't yours to take." My mother nodded through tears. "We know that now. We've lost everything. The house, our standing in the community, our church." I felt the old familiar frustration rise. Even now, even in apology, their first instinct was to list what they had lost, not what they had done to me. I leaned forward, my words clear and deliberate. "You want to know what you actually lost. You lost me, long before the condo. Every time you chose her over me. Every time my achievements were invisible. Every time I needed help and you said I was too strong to need it. You lost me piece by piece for 30 years. They sat, frozen eyes flickering, unable to deny it. The condo was just the moment I finally admitted it to myself. It was when I stopped pretending we were a family. My father tried to salvage something. "We loved you. We always loved you. You're our daughter." I shook my head. "Maybe you did love me, but you never liked me. I wasn't easy like her. I didn't need constant rescuing. So I didn't get attention. And when I finally set a boundary, the first real boundary of my life, you tried to destroy me. Legally, socially, emotionally. You hired lawyers. You let her stalk me. You blamed me for protecting what was mine." My mother reached out across the table, desperate. "Your sister is suffering. She's lost everything. Her marriage, her home. David got custody." I pulled my hand back and answered evenly. "She lost those things because of her own choices. Her fraud, her obsession, her assault. I didn't do that to her. She did that to herself. And you enabled her every step." My father's voice broke. "What do you want from us? What can we do to fix this?" I looked at both of them, tired down to my bones, but finally steady. "Nothing. There's nothing you can do, because you still don't understand what you did wrong. You're not sorry you tried to take the condo. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry you lost your house. But you're not sorry for 30 years of making me feel invisible." They sat there in silence, tears streaming, no defense left. The sight that once would have undone me now only confirmed my resolve. I stood gathering my bag. My voice softened but did not waver. "I hope you find peace. I hope she gets real help, therapy, not just bailouts. I hope the kids are okay through the divorce. But I can't be part of this family anymore. Not this version of it. If you ever genuinely take accountability, not for my feelings, but for your actions, my door isn't permanently locked. But until then, and maybe forever, this is goodbye." I set a few bills on the table for my coffee and pushed back my chair. My mother's hand fluttered in the air as if to catch me. "Wait, please." I paused just long enough to look at them one final time. "Goodbye, Mom. Goodbye, Dad." Then I walked out. I did not glance back at their faces or their tears. I stepped into the bright May sunlight and let the door swing closed behind me. Inside, they remained seated, staring at the empty space where I had been. My father's voice carried faintly through the glass as I moved away. "We really did lose her." And my mother, crying, replied, "We lost her a long time ago. We just didn't notice." As I walked down the street toward my car, my heart thudded with a strange combination of grief and relief. I did not feel the bitterness I once expected, nor the triumph of revenge. What I felt was something rarer: finality. They had come hoping I would save them one more time. Instead, I saved myself. And as I drove away, I realized I was breathing more freely than I had in 30 years. Not guilty for protecting my boundaries, not ashamed for saying no, but at peace for finally honoring myself. For the first time in my life, I was not their solution. I was finally free. 6 months later, I found myself sitting in a very different place than I had been the day I walked out of that coffee shop. November had arrived with crisp mornings and skies that shifted quickly between gold and gray, and my life had settled into something I never thought possible: ordinary happiness. I had moved into a new apartment across town, a modest one-bedroom 900 square feet, smaller than the condo I had given up. But every inch of it belonged to me in a way that mattered more. There were no ghosts in the corners, no memories waiting to pounce. The walls were painted in the calm colors. I chose the shelves lined with plants that thrived in the light from wide windows. I hung art I had picked carefully, pieces that spoke to my taste, not anyone else's. There were no family photos anywhere by design. Instead, pictures of friends' snapshots from hikes and framed prints of places I had traveled filled the spaces. Every object reminded me of the life I had built, not the one I had endured. Work had blossomed as well. The promotion to senior manager had come in October, a recognition of the focus and energy I had been able to pour into my career once I stopped bleeding it out on family drama. Along with the promotion came a 15% raise, but what mattered more was the respect of my colleagues, the sense that my contributions were noticed. For years I had chased scraps of acknowledgement from people who never saw me. Now I was surrounded by people who valued my effort without conditions. It was liberating. Outside of work, I had begun to craft a life that felt full in ways I had once believed were reserved for other people. Twice a month I attended a book club that started as a casual gathering and had grown into a circle of 3 close friends who felt more like sisters than the one I was born with. Weekends often meant hiking trails just outside the city with a group that pushed me physically and gave me the satisfaction of fresh air and aching muscles. Saturday mornings before noon were reserved for the animal shelter, where I cleaned cages, walked dogs, and learned the quiet joy of showing up for creatures who needed nothing from me but kindness. These people were my chosen family, built not from obligation but from respect and shared joy. Even my romantic life had shifted. For 2 months I had been seeing Mark, a man I met through the hiking group. We were taking it slowly, no rush, no pressure, just exploring what it felt like to date without carrying the weight of someone else's expectations. I found myself enjoying the discovery of what I wanted, not what I thought I was supposed to want. That too felt new. Therapy had become a steady anchor in my week. My sessions helped me dig into decades of patterns, the parentification I endured, the golden child dynamics that warped my sense of worth. My therapist held a mirror up to me until I could see how often I had equated love with usefulness. With her guidance, I learned to build healthier boundaries, to notice when old reflexes tried to pull me back into roles I had long since abandoned. For the first time in my adult life, I could say I was happy, not because my family was absent, but because the constant weight of obligation had been lifted. Freedom tasted better than revenge ever could. My mornings had become rituals of gratitude. I would step onto the small balcony with a mug of coffee and watch the sun climb the sky, my cat purring lazily on the couch inside. There was no dread coiled in my stomach, no anticipation of demands waiting for me. Just quiet, just peace. Of course, the family still existed, though, now only at a distance. Uncle Mike remained my one thread of connection, and he kept me informed in careful doses. My sister had accepted a plea deal that spared her prison, but sentenced her to probation, community service, and anger management. She paid a settlement from the money scraped together when my parents sold their house. Her divorce was finalized custody, going mostly to David, and she now lived with my parents in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment working retail for barely more than minimum wage. She still posted bitter fragments online, vague accusations about betrayal and loyalty, never once acknowledging her own part in the wreckage. Some patterns never break. My parents were paying their own price, Both worked low-wage jobs worn down by exhaustion. Living shoulder to shoulder with my sister had stripped away the illusions they once clung to. Uncle Mike reported the strain was constant arguments frequent. He told me once he overheard my father muttering, "Maybe she was right. Maybe we did this wrong." My mother had shushed him, insisting they only ever did what they thought was right for the family. But a crack in the wall of denial had finally formed. They asked about me occasionally, hesitant questions. Was I all right? Was I happy? Uncle Mike told them the truth. She's thriving. Happy. Free. He said they went quiet after hearing it. They had my email. I reminded him if they ever wanted to apologize for real. Not a hollow, "sorry you're hurt," but a recognition of actions of choices. They never wrote. On quiet evenings, I found myself reflecting on what all of it meant. People sometimes asked if I regretted it, if I missed them. The truth was, I missed the family I had wanted, not the family I had. I missed the idea of unconditional love, but what they offered had always been conditional on my compliance. I had learned the hardest lesson of my life. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially when they only demand you burn hotter. Loving myself had meant letting go of those who refused to love me properly. Family was not about blood. It was about respect, reciprocity, the simple decency of treating someone as though they mattered. Rachel. The woman who had bought my condo reached out one afternoon with a text. "Coffee sometime, I'm in your area next week." We met at the same Starbucks where I had once confronted my parents. She had become an unlikely friend over the months, bonded by the strange ways our lives had collided. She laughed over her cup and said, "We both thought we needed revenge. Justice. Vindication. But the best revenge was just living well." I nodded, raising my drink to hers, and letting them face the natural consequences of their own choices. She clinked her cup against mine. "To women who refuse to be doormats," I added softly. "To boundaries. To freedom. To choosing ourselves." We laughed together, the kind of laughter that felt like release. She mentioned that David had reached out apologizing for everything, admitting he had been blind. She told me she forgave him long ago, had remarried, and was happy. The best revenge, she said with a smile, is genuinely not caring anymore. I realized I was on my way there too. One Saturday morning, sunlight streaming through my windows, I sat with coffee in hand, and my cat curled beside me. My phone rested on the table screen, up no notifications. 0 missed calls. For the first time, that 0 didn't sting. It felt like peace. I smiled, opened the book I had left on the arm of the couch, and began to read. They never called after that meeting in the coffee shop, and I never reached out again. Those 98 missed calls from that first night dwindled to none. That silence didn't feel like loss. It felt like freedom. Some called me cruel for walking away from family, but I knew better. I wasn't walking away from family. I was walking away from being treated like I didn't matter. And for the first time in 30 years, I mattered to the person who should have mattered all along, myself. The condo had never really been about real estate. It had been about finally declaring I deserved better, and I had been right. And that brings us to the end of this story. If you've stayed with me all the way through, I want to thank you for giving your time to hear it. Stories like this one are not just about betrayal and revenge. They are about boundaries, healing, and the courage to choose yourself, even when it means walking away from people who should have loved you better. I know many of you watching have lived through something similar, maybe not with a condo, maybe not even with parents or siblings, but with people who thought your worth existed only in how much they could take from you. I'd love to hear what you think. Do you believe the main character made the right choice by cutting ties? What would you have done in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Every like, comment, and subscription helps this community grow, and it means I can keep bringing you stories that spark emotion, reflection, and maybe even a little bit of catharsis. So, go ahead, let me know your take, and I'll see you in the next story.